Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
I'm a fan of classic movies.
Hello and welcome to Overlapping Dialogue, a podcast of double features dedicated to programming the finest, most eclectic, and downright bizarre film pairings, and cataloging the discussions that ensue. We're your gruesome twosome, Kyle and Levi Huffman. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Levi.
And here we are, episode 88. We're climbing on up there. Now, I gotta say, this is not...
Turn it to channel 88 moment.
Yeah, Livingston Dale, R.I.P. Well, I don't know. You know, in the fictional universe of the Ocean's movies.
Oh, he's dead, yeah.
You think so?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to be a comedian, and somebody probably knifed him.
Yeah,
so.
Could be. R.I.P.
Never forget, he's wearing like a... Matador outfit.
In Ocean's 12.
And she's standing there, and she's like...
Yeah, I always love about that little vignette. So that whole sequence is terrific. Yeah. It goes between all them and Ocean's 12 of like, where are they now? And Soderbergh's from Louisiana, and so he had to inject a little bit of... I don't know if it's in Baton Rouge or...
I think it was Baton Rouge, yeah. Because it wasn't New Orleans. It was like somewhere else.
So, got his little tip of the hat, wag of the finger.
Yeah, because as we know, everywhere in Louisiana, if it's not New Orleans, it's just somewhere else. So, what's the capital of Louisiana?
It might be Baton Rouge.
I think it is, yeah. Now I'm thinking about it. Baton Rouge.
Let's see. Yes.
All right. Anyway, moving on.
I thought it was because LSU is there. And,
right. LSU.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know why I did that because I don't like them. But
speaking of obnoxious, Jean-Luc Godard.
Jean-Luc Godard.
But this is not an especially random film pairing because sometimes we pick movies.
But we are going to catalog the discussions that ensue.
Yeah. But it's not an especially unexpected one, I think. Obviously it's from the same director. Have we ever done one from the same director back-to-back, like double feature?
Well, Romero.
That's right. We did do that.
With those, but those are sequel. Well, sort of. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we've done some version of that, but maybe not.
Well, we've done we did the commentaries for the Godfather movies.
Yeah.
So as far
as double feature, I don't know.
Romero might be the only one. Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I feel like this is the Godard episode. Yeah. I mean, by the way, it's Jean-Luc Godard. In case you're confused, no, it's not Goddard.
Yeah,
that's somebody else, or Godard.
I've heard people on the radio 95.7 talk about the Sympathy for the Devil documentary.
Jean-Luc Godard, is that what he said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was Kimber said it, but
right.
It was normally really great.
That Sympathy for the Devil movie you're talking about with Rolling Stones.
Really
I
DJ,
mean,
but
this is kind of the Godard episode. We talked about him when he died for a long time, but I feel like it's time to really visit his movies in a way. And I feel like these are two good... I feel like actually these are two kind of the polar opposites of his ability. Not even in quality, I don't think, either. Just like one thing he does and another thing... Or one thing he's capable of and another thing he's capable of is being quite different. And so those movies are Contempt
from 1963
and Pierrot le Fou from 1965.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I would agree with that. Although I would also add that to me, so much of this 60s work, and we're going to talk about this again later, is there. To me, it's like a one big work, and there's like different chapters to it. And theoretically, you could say that about a lot of directors' filmographies. But I think Godard in the 60s is like one of the biggest versions of that. I mean, if you're like talking about like 90s Coen brother movies, it's like what Barton Fink is and what like Hudsucker Proxy is. It's like those are not exactly quote compatible.
Yeah.
I mean, they're from the same directors, but really random example. But like but with these Godard movies throughout the '60s, and these are the two like most memorable and iconic in different ways versions of that. They very much
Breathless was late 50s or 1960, I think.
I think it was exactly 60.
Yeah.
I think that came out. But are very much like different chapters of this thing that he was evolving into or towards.
Yeah.
And these both represent different things to say, but also like part of this larger story that he was, I think, or not even, I don't know if story is the word, but statement perhaps, that he was in the process of making. But before we even get into the Blue Plate special, got to talk about a little bit of sports and sports entertainment. So the Super Bowl is set by the time you're listening to this Friday when it first drops. We'll be on the cusp of, was it Super Bowl 58 this year?
Turn to Channel 88. Yeah.
Between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Just to talk about both of these teams, on their different tracks, and then maybe collectively.
Yeah. Well, can I say quickly is that you did predict, you were like, no, Kansas City's dangerous back when we last were here.
That's right. Yeah.
So just to give credit to you, because I didn't think they could make it this far either.
Well, again, it's like, I think I said something about this at the time. Like teams like the Chiefs, and this was true of a lot of Patriot teams in like the 2000s, where they won so much. But then they maybe had a little bit of a down year, and you're like waiting for the dynasty to crumble, and you're like, oh, this ain't their year.
Right.
Look at how consistent Baltimore's been, and this NFL playoffs, more so than even other seasons, to me has been a statement of like how important experience in the playoffs are, because San Francisco hasn't gotten to the big game since 4 years ago when they played Kansas City. But they have consistently been in the playoffs, and they have consistently been a contender. The two teams that they played to get here were the Packers, which was way ahead of schedule, I think, of where most people assumed this Packers team would be. They kind of overachieved this season, and overperformed. They upset the Cowboys round one, and Jordan Love has looked pretty terrific kind of in his first full year starting. But then eventually they were just outmatched in San Francisco. And then also with the Detroit Lions, who were also ahead of where everybody expected them to be.
Yeah.
The future right now, you don't want to say things too much in the offseason because things can change, but it seems as though the future is quite bright for the NFC North.
Yeah.
In the next few years between those two teams, not to mention the Vikings, which are always middle of the pack.
And the Bears, who have been much better also. Yeah.
So,
because that's kind of the premier division to me. When I like to think of like old school good football, that's my favorite division, probably in that terms.
That to me is my favorite division in the sense of I actually kind of like all the teams for different reasons or different
the Bears
ways.
are my least favorite, but I'm fine enough with them. I just feel bad for them now because they haven't won so long. Like
I've always thought about this with the Bears. Like they've only won one Super Bowl, but that Super Bowl team is considered one of the best, if not the greatest, NFL team of all time. And so that's worth like 2 or 3 more Super Bowls just
other
because
than
of
the undefeated Miami Dolphins. Yeah, that's another one that people talk about.
Right.
But, but you hear more people talk about the 85 Bears than you do the 72 or 73 Dolphins, whenever that was.
72 was when they actually repeated the next year in 73. That kind of gets lost in the shuffle
that they
sometimes.
won again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't an undefeated season.
Right.
But so like obviously that's great. But you just hear more about those players and those people and Mike Ditka and like I guess because it's newer also by like about a little over 10 years. But and Ron Rivera being part of that also, that kind of had that legacy with that.
Also like this might seem like a random thing to bring up, but like the Super Bowl Shuffle as a little music video was like a huge deal back in the 80s. And like they were just a pop culture phenomenon even just outside of being a football team, and that I think that definitely helps their cultural memory.
Right.
And then the Bears, like SNL sketches, and I mean there's a lot of reasons why that team has endured over the years.
And it's Chicago, it's a bigger market than Miami also.
San Francisco, if they win, I think we'll tie the Steelers and the Patriots for 6 Super Bowls. Obviously, they've been one of the most consistently excellent franchises over the league's history, but have yet to win a Super Bowl again since Steve Young.
Yeah, well, that's what I think we said that here recently, that it's just crazy that you have Joe Montana and then Steve Young right after that. And, of course, Joe Montana went to the Chiefs for a little bit after that, but that you can have both
who he's rooting for. No, probably the
quarterbacks that are that great right back to back like that. Like we've seen that with Favre and Rodgers, and even maybe Rodgers and Love at this point. But it's not very common that you have that happen.
What crazy thing will Jordan Love do in his 30s that will ruin his reputation?
Probably nothing. He seems pretty normal, I think, and pretty.
They all do before.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I don't know. You can look back at Aaron Rodgers though and kind of go, yeah, he kind of had some
warning signs.
There were some mad women in the closet, like somewhere. But it's funny I mentioned that because Jane Eyre, the novel that trope comes from, I was reading at the time of Super Bowl 50, which was the Broncos and Panthers game. So I still, whenever I think of that book, I think of that game, and that that postseason in general.
Right.
Anyway, it's a disaster on a moral level.
Okay.
Oh, I'm moving on. Sorry to the. No, we're not to WrestleMania stuff yet. Hang on. To the Super Bowl. That the Chiefs are there. A lack of moral turpitude that we're dealing with here, and we're going to get.
So you want to say you're part of the outrage machine that's hating on the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce-ness of it all?
Yeah. What the Nine Inch Nails would have called the pretty hate machine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're all in that downward spiral, as was their second album, as we know. Right, big Nine Inch Nail fans.
Not really.
Okay.
I do like a lot of his scores.
What about him in Twin Peaks? What do we think of that?
Yeah, I'm all for that.
No. You remember?
No, I know. Yeah,
okay.
Episode 8. Yeah, where he's in the lodge. Yeah, I remember.
Right.
Yeah. I gotta say,
go
ahead. We were gonna root for whoever the NFC champ was, regardless, because we don't like either Baltimore or Kansas City. I will say, like, Baltimore going into the game was favored, but there was this little voice in the back of my head, and let me just say, we're gonna talk about, is the NFL fixed? I do not think so at all.
No.
And not even that, but I was just thinking about, how funny is it going to be if, like, the Chiefs upset the Ravens, that poo-poos all the Lamar's actually good, finally stock that people have, and then the Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl likeness of it all. Like, early on in the game, I was like, man, it would be kind of funny if that happens. And that's where we are. Kansas City Chiefs are yet again AFC champions. They are now the new New England Patriots in terms of teams that have built a dynasty in the salary cap era and have been able to consistently repeat. The supporting cast has changed a little bit here and there. There's not some of the same receivers are not there anymore. But the teaming of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have consistently won in the AFC. Again, a lot of people thought they were going to be bounced round one. They're still here. How do you account for the Chiefs' continued kind of staying in the midst of the
Before I get to that, I want to jump back to Lamar real quick and just say something there. I have been, and we have been vocal about this, not on this podcast, because this is not a football podcast, believe it or not.
No, we will be getting to Jean-Luc Godard later.
Jean-Luc Godard. He probably hated football, I bet.
Yeah.
What was it George Will said? Football brings together all the worst aspects of America, the violence and committee meetings or whatever, Yeah. What are you going to say? I'm sorry about
I was just going to say, I don't know if Godard liked anything that brought anyone joy except, like, Nicholas Ray movies. Like, I think that's, like, And even
or
that,
Humphrey
like
Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart, you know,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
there are certain aspects of joy in cinema he finds, but anything else, I don't know if he found joy in anything. Like, just he's that type of guy,
right.
you know.
But we'll get to him in a little while. But so we've been that type of person though. Where we've been kind of more like, I don't know about Lamar Jackson. You know, about like, I'm not sure. And there's always been excuses. People come out, oh, he was sick with COVID, he got injured, blah blah blah.
I forgot about the COVID thing.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. You know, where he was out. That
He
it
got
was more or less
twice,
that,
wasn't it?
Yeah, well, he had it that 2020-2021 season, and then he had it, I think, again the next season or at some point.
I feel like it might have been the same season.
Or no, maybe it was, and
I think
so that was just kind of a wasted season.
I can't remember exactly, but I could easily Google this.
Right.
But I'm not going to.
No, we don't do our research here. Because we're research-minded people, so we just know things. We drink and we know things. We just know things or we don't know them, and that's it.
We drink yoo-hoos and we know things.
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
We drink jug mugs. And what's that thing? Them things that as kids, it was like, the juice mugs. It was like jug mug.
What was the Ghostbusters Ecto? What that in the thing? Like what's the Slimer?
Yeah.
It was like orange juice or something he used to be on.
I have no idea.
All right. This I am going to
Yeah,
look
we're not
up.
going to look up other stuff. But anyway, so as you're doing that, we wondered about him. But let me say, I don't want to say he's not a good quarterback. He's clearly good.
Yes,
High C.
High C.
Okay.
Ecto cooler.
That's so stupid.
Yeah.
Just
Just
like
like
Ghostbusters.
anything relating to Ghostbusters.
Listen, Ghostbusters fans are the worst people alive. I'm just going to tell you, like,
worse than Nazis.
yeah.
like?
Well, I mean, they're not quite there, but I mean, yeah.
Okay, sure, they're not that.
Okay,
but
sure, they're not Nazis.
Frozen Empire
But
coming out later.
yeah,
this year.
but you know, I love you had to look
Next
up
month.
what the name of it was because you didn't care that much.
Well, literally, I just Googled Ghostbusters.
Oh,
and
okay.
It just popped up next month.
But anyway, like Ghostbusters, and don't worry, we'll get to Jean-Luc Godard eventually. Ghostbusters are the worst people because if you ever notice, like how angry those fans get about anything, they're randomly. If you were to match up the amount of anger of fan bases, it would be like Star Wars is up there.
But that's a kind of another category,
Right, because
there's
it's so big.
many people.
Yeah, so but I'm talking
yeah,
like
right. the intensity of the
intensity and the sample size.
Yes.
Like Ghostbusters fans are so awful. Like they act like it's the only thing that exists. Mm-hmm. They debate the real Ghostbusters all the time about whether that's good or not. I guess I don't know. You know that the animated show.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then I remember there was that video game on the 360, which actually looked kind of cool, admittedly, the way it looked. And I know people I think were either loved that or hated that. Then these newer Ghostbusters movies have come out, and it has just been, it's like that version of the prequels or the sequel films for Star Wars. It's like how people, and they're like, oh, it's because women are in it. I was just like, really sexist, awful. I mean, it really comes from the 1980s. It's really like, we took all the negative feelings of the 1980s,
and put it in
which,
one
by the
thing.
way, I'm writing a novel that is a little bit something about that, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of in that mode right
Yeah.
now. But all the negative emotions of the 1980s, of which there were many, maybe the most rage-filled decade, one of them actually, and you transpose that onto, because even in that you could say that about the 70s, but I felt like that built to the point where in the 80s, even though things were better, in quotes, under Ronald Reagan, in quotation marks,
You
doing
can't
it
hear
at the
quotation
microphone,
marks,
but people had normalized their rage, I feel like, by then, where it was just a normal part of life to be angry all the time. But, and there's even more of a version of that now, honestly, it's even worse. But that, like...
All this might tie into a later discussion we might actually have about an adaptation of something set in the 80s that
Yeah.
is transposed to now, which actually might work. We'll see.
But so that's all just to say that like those people are just literally the worst people because they act like children, literally, who are mad about things.
Levi, to your mind, what's the best aspect of the first Ghostbusters movie?
The best aspect?
Yeah.
Probably Ernie Hudson.
Not even Bill Murray?
Well, he would be one, yeah. Probably. And I actually think there are parts where Lloyd Ramis.
Lloyd Ramis.
Lloyd Ramis is actually kind of funny in that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Your boy, though.
Well, no, hang
DA.
on. Well, you didn't ask what the worst thing about it was.
Well, I
Yeah.
was going to make a point based on what the best thing
Okay, well,
is.
probably Bill Murray or Ernie
Most
Hudson.
people would
I also
agree
like
Bill
Sigourney
Murray.
Weaver's okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm saying a lot of positive things about a movie that's really trash. But
oh god, what's the Honey I Shrunk the Kids guy though?
He's
pretty funny in it. What's his name?
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis.
Yeah, Rick Moranis is funny. See, we're saying a lot of things.
No, but so my whole point was
Yeah.
the Bill Murray thing. Most people would say Bill Murray's the best aspect of the first Ghostbusters. Is that he's like, this is all kind of dumb and ridiculous and stupid. Like, but it's not even in a way like Han Solo is in the original Star Wars, because originally with the arc of the character, Han Solo has his "I love you, I know" moment in Empire, and like there is this change of character, and like so it's like that type of character, like the grit, you know, the cynical above it all, but like there's never any character growth or development for anyone in these friggin' movies. It's just like I don't know, and he's making fun of the movie he's in. Bill Murray is, and it's just like I don't know, and then the fans take it way too seriously.
No, well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like we're already gonna have if we get any hate mail, it's about what we're saying right now. I guarantee you, there's gonna be somebody out there pissed off right now. Listen to this. We don't like you. Go away. Don't listen to this podcast.
So how does this relate?
But anyway, well, hang on. There's one joke in that I do think is really funny. Is that towards the end of the movie where that guy's named Dickless or something, and he's like something. They're like, "Is this true?" And Bill Murray says, "Yes, it's true. This man has no dick." Like, I think it's so funny. But anyway, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, let's get back to that. And we will get to Godard. Don't worry. Maybe.
Or even the Super Bowl. See, we're having to work our way back.
Yeah.
But, there's that, like, metric, though, of quarterbacks where you have the great ones. Basically, you have to win a Super Bowl to be great. It's a similar way in soccer.
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers.
Right. Eli
Manning. The worst quarterback to ever be a Super Bowl MVP.
Twice.
Yeah.
So, like, you have those great quarterbacks who have won, obviously. But then you have, I think, good ones like Dan Marino,
Philip
Rivers, people like that. And Lamar could be one of the better ones of those who don't. Now, he still could win a Super Bowl. I'm not saying he won't.
Yeah.
But there is that metric of, I don't think you should say you're a bad quarterback just because you don't win the Super Bowl.
Right, yeah.
But what I know you're saying is not that he's not a good quarterback, but that he's not a great one. Good receivers score touchdowns.
As Chris Carter wants to say.
Great quarterbacks win Super Bowls. Right.
Show up in the big games.
Nick Foles has won a Super Bowl. Has Lamar Jackson done that? No. Now
anybody would look at the metrics and say, "Oh well, Lamar's a better quarterback than Nick Foles." Like most people would say. I mean, if you just look at the regular season stats, like Lamar's he's already won a league MVP.
This is why it's all about team.
Well, yeah,
it's not. It shouldn't be. And I know we talk about that all the time. As in quarterbacks are the leader, blah blah blah. That's why you got to have an O-line, a defense, good special teams. I know that's something people don't care about, but it's like that's some clutch moments that happen in that stuff. Good kickers, good punter, Well,
arguably the Ravens have the best kicker of all time.
Yeah.
And, what's that guy's name? Justin Tucker.
Yeah.
I think's his name.
So I'm not. So it's all on that team, and it's on Lamar too. I'm not trying to be devil's advocate for Lamar because we've been saying for years, he's a fluke in terms of what you think he is.
Well, you saw the same thing happening with him that happened with Cam Newton, and then it happened with
Cam Newton was another one.
Blake Griffin, both of which are black quarterbacks, and this is happening too. And Lamar is, primarily does like to run, but he can throw the ball definitely when needed to. But in general, Baltimore had one of the best run offenses of the season, not just even with Lamar, but with the running backs and whatnot. But
we
also didn't translate.
Yeah. Josh Allen is another person that should be on the hot seat a little more because, and I think that easily that could be, presumably, even that could be the AFC Championship game next year. Them two, who know? I know that we always base things on they're hot right now and blah blah blah, but it's like you can't just assume that the team's going to totally fall apart in a year. You know what I mean? Those teams are going to be there again.
Yeah.
But it just depends, or maybe not. We don't know. But it's not like
the
Carolina.
Window of success in the NFL is very small.
Yeah.
And if you do not sometimes hit the one window and then people go elsewhere.
Yeah.
You've got to rebuild the team. That's why the Buffalo was in such an interesting position this season because Allen's still clearly great. They had a lot of defensive players that were injured this year. There's a big question of, and they kind of had middle of the year were kind of faltering, but then had a strong end of the season
after Sean McDermott
and
pledged
there
to
is
Al-Qaeda.
never. One of the most
We don't even have time to talk about that right now. We'll come back to that someday.
One day, yeah.
Sean McDermott.
We'll give
about,
Sean come on the show.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. Yeah,
because
it was years ago.
We might bring Vim on. We'll see.
Oh wow, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, Vim and Sean McDermott going at it.
How could you do that? Sorry, I can't do a good impression of Vim. That was more of like a Werner.
Luckily,
Herzog.
that's the only time we'll ever do an impression of Vim Vendors on the show. But the window of success is so small that sometimes if you miss it. Because, I mean, one team we didn't talk about at all is the Bengals. Because Burrow got hurt, and so he was basically out this whole season. And I mean,
they might be screwed.
Yeah, and obviously, like, I'm not a Bengals fan. In the same way that I actually like all the NFC North teams, I do not like any AFC North team.
Yeah, no.
Although,
not even Cleveland.
You know,
I'll put up with them, but
Cleveland or Cincinnati, either one of them I would like more, but still
Ravens and Steelers is a like apocalyptic scenario.
But anyways, like you just never know, and so everybody thought, oh, this is finally the year. They dominated all year. They're the most consistent team. Really, the second most consistent was probably the 49ers, who are now in the game.
You said, going up,
and they had some eggs throughout the season of people questioning them if they would make it, and they did.
Well, like you said, that Ravens run was so good.
And they were dominating. They dominated several teams that were in the playoffs. That made it to the playoffs.
Yeah. But we had
Miami, 49ers. They even dominated in the regular season.
But we had seen Pacheco on my favorite name, Aiden Pacheco, on Kansas City just run through teams.
Brothers,
and he did that again. I mean, so like you can talk about how great their defense is, but you got to always remember who you're going up against. And like I said, this team is seasoned and knows what they need to do. And Andy Reid is.
There are a lot of questions too about Travis Kelce throughout the year. He's getting older and being a tight end of whether he still had it or not. But again, it's like I said, ultimately, when the playoff time starts, these guys who have been there, they know, all right, this is the time. We've only got like maybe 3-4 games we got to get through, and I'm going to give it all in those games, and that's what happened. Yeah. And again, Baltimore, sometimes the worst thing that can happen is you have a bye week in round one because
or you beat
they looked good in round two against Houston, but Houston was another one of those teams that were overachieving and shouldn't have gone as far as they did.
That game was kind of close until it wasn't, so... Yeah, and I mean, it's the same thing that happened to, like I said, we talked about it a million times, Carolina beating Arizona in the NFC Championship game 2016, that was honestly the worst thing that could have happened to them because they beat them like a dog. I mean, it was terrible. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember us watching that game, how we were just laughing and going on like, oh, man, this is great, whatever, and then didn't turn out. But, yeah, and so that's where we are. No, I don't think sports are fixed. I think anybody who thinks a lot of sports are fixed doesn't know a whole lot about sports.
There are so many angles that you would have to cover if that was really true.
Leaks.
And like,
I'm not saying sports haven't been fixed. And I'm not saying there haven't been conspiracies. There's been all kinds of conspiracies to screw over teams. There was, bountying. There's the Deflategate stuff. There's the stealing signals. Everything the Patriots do.
Yeah. Did. There's a new era now.
Right. Oh, yeah, they don't do that anymore. They don't cheat anymore. But so there's been versions of that. That's more like cheating, though.
When that whole Spygate thing came out, there are a lot of people that said that, and even with stealing signals a little bit too, there's a lot of people from other teams that kind of quietly said, listen, we all do what we can get away with. Basically, like, whatever we can kind of think we can get away with, we're going to do. It's like what happened
with the Manchester City... not exactly a salary cap, but they're like financial dealings to get players. Every team in the Premier League does that. Mm-hmm. But like, and Chelsea self-reported, said, yeah, we did this also. Look at our books, or we think we might have. I love it's like, we think we might have done that. Like, what, you don't know whether you did it? But they basically got cleared of it more or less by saying, okay, it was better for them that they turned themselves in.
So we just want to say, Overlapping Dog officially endorses the Kansas City Chiefs played their way into
the
Super Bowl.
That's what I want to say is
about it.
You watch the games and they're firing off. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, and I've said this for the few years. Everybody says it. Mahomes is crazy good.
He really is the next Tom Brady in terms of talent. Well, he's doing things athletically Tom Brady never could have done.
He likes to get out of the pocket. Brady didn't never.
Yeah, I mean, he's the new guy. He is.
No, and
we don't say that. We say that as Raider fans. I mean, we don't.
And that's the thing too.
You have to respect.
And we'll get to San Francisco too, because I want to actually talk about them a little bit because I feel like everybody's talking the other way, and we are too. But either way, for me, it's a regional or divisional rival of the Raiders. So it's like it doesn't matter. Because, I mean, I
don't know the full story of the 49ers Raider fan relationship.
I'm sure there's something because they're right across the bay.
I know. I'm just saying I don't know. We're from North Carolina, so we're not in that world on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, but and they didn't play each other that much, I'm sure, but that with that all being said, it's just there's too much to fix a game. And no, it's just this team beat these other teams, like I said, because they knew what they needed to do.
It's a weird thing, too, because people are like, oh, that's who the media wants. It's like, it's even more complicated than that. It's like, the media is already obsessed with teams that are succeeding. So it's like, when I say self-fulfilling prophecy, I don't mean that it's fixed. It's just like, no, the media is obsessed with the Kansas City Chiefs because they have consistently been one of the biggest winners over the last few years. Don't worry, that won't last forever. There will be the next team in 10 years, 15 years from now. But, that's just the media already is following teams that have been successful. And then this team has, of course, been successful, had a little bit of a down year, but because of their experience, played their way into the game. I mean...
Yeah, and also, if anything at all, and I don't believe this either, just let me be on the record. If anything, it's that Taylor Swift looked around and said, who's the best team?
Yeah.
Kansas City. Let me go date one of them, that way I can be in the Super Bowl halftime show. If there's anything, that's the most complicated it gets. Yeah. And I don't even believe that. I really don't. Right. I'm just saying, that's just stupid. But if anything, it's that. It's not that the whole media came up with this big, well,
I think it's even at the beginning of the season, the NFL had an ad they were making fun of this, where they were had a script meeting.
Yeah,
and they have all these people that are from the league. I think Keegan-Michael Key was in the.
Yeah, I remember that
ad where it was they were making fun of the fact that people were saying that it's a big script and let's sit down and write the script together. It was kind of a funny idea for the ad, but
they're gonna get their own grim version of that.
They gonna get their own grim.
But yeah, so it's just, that's all just very stupid. And I mean, people who say those things a lot really don't know much about sports because they don't understand the amount of effort someone has to put towards that. Now, yeah, people can throw games, people can intentionally be bad, but that didn't happen here. It's just that the Ravens got punched in the mouth and they were worried about sopping the blood up for so long that they were just running all over them. I mean, and so... Yeah, that's just something I just get more and more militantly angry about people who really think stuff's fixed like that. It's like, no, they're just that good. They just are. And that's all there is.
Levi, some people don't watch the Super Bowl for the game. Some people watch it for the ads or for a Usher halftime show. By the way, what currency does a Usher halftime show have in the year 2024? I thought that's something 10, 15 years ago would have been a huge deal.
What's the main song he does?
Yeah.
You know the name of it? Or
I think it's funny that, I think.
Yeah. I literally heard that song and I felt like I was 6 again.
Yeah, is the name of the song.
Okay.
Yeah, that used to be I was going to say Spring Break, a Still Creek classic.
Yeah. So that's what.
Yeah.
So don't worry, we're getting to that. So that's what I think of every time I hear that song. I feel like I'm a kid again because I heard it so much. And that made me realize that, man, he's that old and been around that. Not that he's real old, but just he's been around that long. And I'm like, what's the point of that? And so...
I don't know what their calculus was. Because even some people like The Weeknd or Beyonce, you're like...
Or Justin Timberlake.
They're clearly popular right now.
Super Bowl.
And I mean, and people know who Usher is, so I'm not acting like he's just some...
Well, Usher found Justin Bieber, I need you to remember.
He ain't some obscure guy. Well, he's probably going to make an appearance during the whole thing too.
Yeah.
Usher is 45 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime I say yeah now. But so anyway, let's talk about San Francisco a little bit.
I was going to say Tom York in the Super Bowl halftime show. Like,
imagine people looking at him. Yeah.
From all these angles.
What if they like redid the oh gosh, what's the song I'm trying to think of it where he's in the fishbowl thing?
Oh, No Surprises?
No
No
Surprises, yeah. What if they just redid that but now with him?
Yeah.
But it looked like the Johnny Depp appearing at the MTV Movie Awards thing where he's in the
oh right, yeah.
In the spacesuit, which is maybe literally the worst moment in broadcasting history, actually. Might be.
Forgot about that.
But yeah, yeah.
All right, San Francisco.
So, with that, let's talk about Brock Purdy a little bit. Known as Mr. Irrelevant because he was picked last in the draft. Went in ostensibly as a backup for Jimmy Garoppolo, who was like MIA, nowhere to be found right now with the Raiders, and probably will be their backup quarterback next season. But this, I think, and the good news is he's young still. But this
is only second
I
year.
think, is really the question of, all right, what can you do? This is it. And it's weird. I hate there to be that much pressure on somebody that young. But that really is the biggest question: is can Brock Purdy do it?
Well, because they have all these skill position players who are great. They got a great defense. So
Christian
the only
McCaffrey.
thing about San Francisco's team that's really a question mark is him.
Yeah.
Which he is the quarterback. He had some tough games this season, and there was even in some of those tough games where he was, the commentators naturally so were like, I don't know, he don't seem like he's got it today. And then even in some of those games, I still saw him make scrambles for first down where I was like, wow, all right, So yeah, it's a huge question of whether or not what his trajectory is.
And we could, if he wins, it could be a new version of, this is the new Kurt Warner, comes in, does thing, even though he's younger than Kurt Warner was.
But funny enough, I know we compared Mahomes to Brady, but Brady was this guy who was picked so far down the list and was good his first few years.
Tom Brady, Brock Purdy, he's Purdy good.
But
they never said he's Brady good.
But those first few, especially the first Super Bowl that the Patriots won, that was more of a defensive-minded team. And now Brady,
Philadelphia in that one?
No, that was
Carolina,
Rams,
right? Rams. I'm sorry.
Then they played Carolina 2 2 years later, and then Philadelphia a year after that.
Yeah.
And so, he definitely got better and became an elite quarterback. But those first few seasons, he was kind of sort of a game manager who outplayed. What was that quarterback that he passed? He played for the Bills for a few seasons. I can't remember quite right.
I know Doug Flutie was at New England before that, but I don't know any other ones.
Yeah,
that was before that though. That was a ways back.
Yeah. So, but anyways,
Doug Flutie has a video game, by the way, which I think's hilarious. I just can't get over that.
Replace.
That's what's crazy is how few New England quarterbacks there have been.
Drew Bledsoe.
Oh, Drew Bledsoe. Yeah.
Think of.
Right.
Anyways. So, Purdy in his own way could be the next Brady, even though we said Mahomes kind of sort of is.
Well, and they've had quarterback problems at San Francisco for a long time. Because, we have to remember, last time they were, well, no, that's not true. They were in the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. But, they, back when they had Colin Kaepernick and the whole we could honestly somebody needs to write a book or do a whole podcast on the whole Colin Kaepernick aura.
Yeah. What
all that is and means and... just a massive question mark in NFL history as far as what does any of that mean to anything. And I'm not even saying it doesn't. I'm just saying what is it? I don't know. But after him having then Alex Smith, who was, injured later, and then he also was with the Chiefs as well, and Garoppolo coming from New England, and then him going to the Raiders and being injured a lot, and now Brock Purdy, and then we have to remember also Purdy was injured last season. Major reason they didn't get through, I think they were in the NFC Championship game, right, and lost, right? So this is his once again, like people were saying with Lamar. All right, he's healthy, he's good. Let's see what he can do. And so I think that's ultimately the bigger question is what can Christian McCaffrey do also, we have to remember, because that's the hot ticket is them two together. I think that Pacheco and some of the other running backs are good.
Samuel, too, is a terrific receiver playing for
and
the
that all,
49ers.
Yeah, and that
George
could all
Kittle
work out
also.
for the Chiefs. Oh, yeah, George Kittle. I forgot about George Kittle. He's tied in, ain't he?
Yeah.
So, like, all of them are, like, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a team that just kind of knows how to BS their way through it to get the points. You know what I mean? That, like, they're not... Right now, they're not quite as golden as they used to be, but, it should be a good game overall. I don't think the 49ers are favored by much. So
yeah, I think they opened a few
2.5, I think, is what I'd seen. But so that's all to say. It should be a good one, but I have a slight feeling it'll be San Francisco. But I don't know.
That's your official prediction?
Yeah, but I'm not definitive on that because this postseason has been very fraught and very complicated, and a lot of different things went different ways than what was expected. So, but we have to also say that was a close game, really close game that they played with Detroit. Detroit got out early, looked like it was going to be pretty easy for them, and then it didn't turn out that way. But
that was another thing of experience.
Yeah,
the role it played.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all to say that it's not fixed. See how it goes. Pulling for a Beetlejuice trailer.
Well, we were saying that, they put out a poster for that, and they put out more and more media and some stills here and there. All I'm saying is I'd say an above average chance that we see something. I've actually not heard about, I've read some things about general trends about the other ads. I've not really heard anything about the movie trailers, what are even going to be the things that are put out there for that.
Zone of Interest 2.
I don't think so.
Zone of Interest, Zone Harder. I don't know.
I think, I'm going to make a prediction.
Sorry to make a joke about that.
I think, and this ain't what I want to happen. I want the 49ers to win, but I actually think the Chiefs are going to
probably
win. It could go either way. But I just feel, and again, it ain't a media creation. I just feel like when the going gets tough, they know how to win games. And, other little subplot, Kyle Shanahan has yet to win the big one. And he was also offensive coordinator for the Falcons' collapse against the New England Patriots.
That's important to know.
So that's a storyline going on for him right now as, well, you've been to Super Bowls as coordinators, you've been to Super Bowl as a coach, and you've yet to win the big one. So that's something with him. So we shall see. Going from sports to sports entertainment. A lot of drama going on right now in WWE.
I'll cede most of this to you because you know more about it.
So, just to backtrack ever so slightly, Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble. I think he was the first back-to-back winner since Austin did in like the late 90s or early 2000s, I think. And everybody had been expecting, he's going to rematch with Roman from WrestleMania last year, and he even went as far as after he won to point up to where Roman was in the box seats. But there has been teases for a while that The Rock might get involved and might have a super match with Roman. That's been something that's actually been in the ether, I think, for a few years. Again, I've only been refollowing pro wrestling for the last nearly a year now. And this last SmackDown after, Cody had said, I want to challenge Roman for the title, but then there was this little segment on Raw where Seth freaking Rollins, who's my personal favorite, who's the World Heavyweight Champion, he's injured right now, said, hey, why don't you challenge me? This is the working class title anyways, the WWE title. It don't even mean anything anymore. And then he comes out and acts as though he's about to challenge Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship, but then The Rock comes out, and he kind of cedes the floor over to him and walks away, and then there's this big stare down at the end of SmackDown, implying that there's going to be a Rock-Roman WrestleMania main event. there's been a lot of speculation online that The Rock, who's now a board member of TKO, which is the big umbrella company encompassing WWE and UFC, that he is now board of directors, has politicked his way into the main event because, according to him, he thinks it would be an even bigger draw than a Cody Roman match. Again, a lot of speculation, a lot of drama going on
after the Vince McMahon ousting. I think there's something to that he's kind of taken over, basically, of doing what he wants to do.
Because Triple H essentially was running a lot of the creative, but he naturally has ties to the McMahon family. Married to Stephanie. So, just as somebody who's kind of looking at this more from afar, what's your whole take on The Rock possibly politicking his way into main event and WrestleMania? And let me also just say that there's this huge online movement and backlash going on now with the WWE fans. Everything that the WWE, Roman Reigns, or The Rock have put up over the last few days has been spammed with hashtag We Want Cody, which is one of the biggest trending things on Twitter right now. Again, from afar, how are you taking all this in, just kind of as a casual wrestling fan?
It's about the most low-class thing I can think of that from The Rock could do, yes. I mean, just the amount of ego that you have to have as a human being to have been The Rock and still be like, yeah, I'll fight my own family member at WrestleMania to get the WWE title.
Well, he already got accused of this too when he came back to face John Cena, which I think that was more justified because that was years ago, and I think that would have made more sense.
That has been over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean that made more sense than this does. I feel like, and also it should be said his film career is kind of sputtering right now. Black Adam was a massive garbage flop.
Well, he's real into marketing.
I mean, yeah, that's a hobby of his. I feel like
he said that
he's a marketing hobbyist. Yeah.
Which means a-hole, by the way. It really, as somebody who I just frankly don't care a whole lot about this stuff, but like, even though I'm a casual wrestling watcher and you know, it's really disappointing though. I mean, you know, and I don't think it should be always all about what fans want, but well, let me step back on that. It is kind of all about what fans want, you know, ultimately, but I don't necessarily.
Well, would you agree that more than any other art form, in quotes or in italics or whatever you want to say, wrestling is more dependent on that than literally
because they can make up whatever they want.
And also what the fans want with pro wrestling is like a direct through line that drives the storytelling in a literal way, more so than, oh, they didn't do what I wanted in this Star Wars movie. I mean, there's just a remove with that.
Yes.
I feel like.
Well, let me take it to a further extent that I'm going to immediately walk back. Like, what I mean is, I don't think it should always be about the fans in the sense that they just dictate whatever happens or safety or whatever. I mean, there needs to be certain safeguards in place to make sure. And I'm not even saying that. Like, let's just say that officially Gunter started coming out. Was officially like wearing Nazi flags and like SS regalia, and then everybody started doing that and was like supporting that. That would be something where it's like, no, this has to be stopped. Like, you know, this is an actual problem. I know that's not going to happen, so I'm not saying that. But I'm saying like if the fans are like, no, we're Nazis now, blah blah blah, and we're like spreading hate speech or whatever, then that would be its own thing. So I'm not saying that in the sense of like. But I still don't think fans should always get what they want. Of like, no, you need to let this play itself out the way they want to take you. You know what I mean? But it's so clear that The Rock... It's not that people don't love The Rock, although this, I think, if this follows through, this will be a big tarnishing of his legacy, I think, ultimately. And it's going to be interesting to watch to see that. Because as much as I'm a fan of The Rock, I was always more of a Stone Cold fan anyway, so I'm kind of not emotionally attached to that fact. But that, everybody loves The Rock, but at the same time, they're like, but all right, you're The Rock, move on, you're done. Like, we want this thing now. We want Cody Rhodes. And so, therefore, they have to take that into account. I actually think they might walk this back.
Well,
somehow.
There's even been slight breadcrumbs that this is all part of the plan
Yeah.
And that there's still going to be Cody Roman, and that this is a detour sidetrack that is only going to hype that match up more.
Yeah.
And I would even think, like, I would even be in favor of something where, like, The Rock had a match at Elimination Chamber. Okay, The Rock, let's make this fancy book just for a second. The Rock has a match at Elimination Chamber to prove he still got it, but then the Bloodline just interferes in that match and, like, beats him up, bruises him up, and knocks him out of WrestleMania, allowing Cody to then still have that match, go back into it, and then set up a future non-title Roman Rock match at SummerSlam, say.
Yeah.
And avoid, like... but again, there's speculation that this is all part of a master plan, but then there's also evidence that would lead us to believe, no, this is what's going to happen, so it's hard to even know. And again, we juxtapose this with football because this all quite literally is fixed and predetermined. So there's, decisions are actively being made about how and why this is happening. But I will say, it has been nice to see the Cody groundswell, which we saw the house show back in November. He was the loudest.
Have you heard anything about the Knoxville show last night?
There was a Knoxville show last night, and they showed a clip of what happened on SmackDown, and there were boos from the crowd. Not like stratospheric boos, but there were, like, people that were... It was kind of the crowd was pretty nonplussed with seeing that again. So, yeah. Yeah, that's where we are.
So, yeah, I think it sucks.
I think R-Truth needs to be the one.
For WWE fans. I mean,
R-Truth needs his shine.
I mean, it makes you wonder, what about Shinsuke?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to see him be the, Cody. And him just, your father was inbred. I just want to see more of that. You know. Then there's Seth Rollins. Like you've said, it's like, what's going to happen there? I don't know.
Well, also...
I also think the whole CM Punk thing's wrapped up in this.
That is an element to all this of why the sliding glass might have moved the way it is, because he had a torn tricep.
Really, it was kind of a perfect storm of hell for right at the Royal Rumble for Vince McMahon stuff, CM Punk getting hurt, and that literally kind of changed all these plans,
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
So, who knows? We'll see. A lot of drama going on with the WWE right now. Speaking of drama, I don't know. This might set a record for the longest amount of time we went before the Blue Plate Special. I don't know.
Of them.
You know what time it is. Pucker up and close your eyes and kiss this. Goodbye. It's time for the Blue Plate Special.
Hi, Audrey.
Norma, have a cup of coffee, please.
Sure. I'll have what she's having.
Hey, who ordered the large pepperoni? Coming up!
Your unsolicited, was it country music song? Yeah. Country music drop is right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I hold my nose, I close my eyes. I took a drink. As it's like, we're just all over the place.
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, anyway, let's talk about effing Paul Thomas Anderson.
We're fans.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, we got a There Will Be Blood poster just over there.
Yeah.
Huge fans of PTA.
In the recording space.
Obviously, one of my hobbies in life is trying to figure out what the next PTA movie is after, the new one comes out, and just waiting for what the next one's going to be. So he's currently shooting his latest movie. I guess his last movie is Licorice Pizza. That came out late 2021. So, and, I think some of this news, or the shooting, I think got delayed because of the strike that happened last year. Yeah. It's currently shooting. There's been a few on-set pics that have came out from it.
I haven't even seen those.
Yeah.
We're going to have to see this now.
Let me see.
Let it hit the weights. Now.
Let's see. In character for new role. Wait a minute.
What?
That's PT. Yeah, or that's
what the heck is that?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
What?
Yeah.
Is he wearing a mask? What is
No,
that?
it's like he's wearing like a beanie and glasses. Dark sunglasses. They're shooting some.
I can't even tell what that is. Like
they're shooting some new movie together. This is the first
that
time
PTA picture always gets me.
This is the first time they've ever shot anything together.
What? You looking up?
That's him right there.
That's funny. Wait, hang on a second. Wellness. Yeah, that's Vinland, I bet.
So there's been a lot of speculation that Paul Thomas Anderson is adapting our old friend, his old friend, he actually knows him, Thomas Pynchon's novel Vinland for the big screen, but with a modern day twist, that it's actually going to be set in the present day.
BC project.
Some other cast members who have been announced: Sean Penn, Tiana Taylor, Wood Harris, Regina Hall, Alana Haim, Shana McHale, Chase Infinity, and Brenda Lorena Garcia. Again, not a lot of picks out there of this quite yet.
Wait, go back a second.
Yeah.
No, that next one. Back. Okay, again. I don't know. Where are we? Yeah. Who is that?
I'm not sure.
For a second, I thought that was Peter Deming. I was like, who? What? Like, yeah, but he does his own stuff now. Anyway, yeah.
How do you take in this possibility of PTA not only adapting Vinland but adapting it for the modern day? It was announced a while back that his latest movie was going to be set in the modern day, and that was obviously something me and you, as fans of him, have been clamoring for
20
a
years.
While. So, how do you even
Can you believe that, though? 20 years.
Yeah,
really, it's been that long.
Except for a lot of his music videos have been in the modern day. But how do you take in these possibilities?
Well, part of me is at least disappointed in the fact that, we're doing Pynchon again.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I mean, why not? That's been bandied about for a while. He's mentioned that in the past, saying maybe he'd like to do that. I mean, they're very thematically similar, very aesthetically similar.
In that.
And so maybe this is his response to Trump America in the way that was about Reagan America.
It's like maybe going to be about MAGA era America.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for anything. Just the fact that it's in the modern day, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And the fact he's going to be working with DiCaprio, that'll be interesting.
They've never worked together. So.
Yeah, that hasn't happened. So, yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic about any movie he makes. To me, I mean, we've been vocal about this, and in my review of Licorice Pizza, I talk about this also, that for him, since Inherent Vice and then also Phantom Thread, I was a little more hesitant. I was like, I don't know. Not that those movies aren't really good or great in their own way, but I was kind of like, okay, I'm not really inherently interested in what this is as much as, well, I was in Inherent Vice, but we've done that, been there, done that. I'm not going to say any more about that. We've said all we need to. But that after Licorice Pizza, I was like, I'll never doubt anything he wants to do. Like, because it was like, okay, what's this going to be? Yeah, all right. And then it was what it was.
Well, especially like him going back into the world of the 70s after doing some movies there.
Yeah,
it was
Boogie
like,
Nights
okay,
and Inherent Vice
do we need to do that? But that was
really
good.
So in that sense, I'm not going to obviously doubt anything he decides to do at this point. But I don't want to speculate too much on it either because, I mean...
I think at one point I'd heard Joaquin Phoenix was rumored to be surrounding this movie, but maybe Sean Penn, it seemed like that's maybe who of course he was in Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Tom Waits make a reprise.
I'm a huge fan of Vinland. That's one of my favorite Pynchon books. And there's part of me when I heard this possibility, it was like, why don't you just do it back when it was set? But then I was like, you know what, actually... It might be really interesting to update this story for the modern day because it definitely has some pull. And I don't know what conception, if this truly is what it is, would be exactly, but it would be interesting to think of like the conceptualization of the 2000s to 2010s Obama era, but that being the 60s in comparison, if you're doing the one-to-one comparison. And so I'm just fascinated by him again doing something maybe in the modern day, and then certainly the possibilities of that and updating that. I think it's a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah, I wonder what Pinchon thinks of that. I'm sure he loves the idea.
He probably would.
He seems very supportive from what I've heard over whatever that PTA wants to do.
Yeah.
And I would think he would be that way with about any version of his work that it would be made.
Yeah.
He would probably be very open to whatever they wanted to do, because he'd be like, I don't want you to do the exact same thing. That was kind of what was wrong with Inherent Vice in its own way. I think it was a little too similar. But it's
so
encouraging.
I know I speak for both of us when I say just more PTA movies.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Well,
whenever you can get that
and we'll
done.
speak briefly about also the music videos he's made. Obviously, we had seen versions of that before, but we had just watched separately. We didn't watch them together, but we had watched the music videos for the new Smile, that band that's kind of an offshoot band from Radiohead. And there's Tom York and Johnny Greenwood, and then I can't ever remember that other guy's name.
I had kind of forgotten about this till Levi had reminded me that they were doing this, and watched those videos that he's of course shot stuff for them before. And Johnny Greenwood, of course, has scored his movies before, so they have.
One of my favorite music videos in general is "Daydreaming" for a Moon-Shaped Pool. I think it's really great. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't seen that, go watch that. But yeah, these are really good.
But again, we joked about when that came out, though. This is the closest we have to a modern day PTA movie.
Yeah, well, when we had seen that, he made the documentaries for Haim and other.
What was that Netflix short that he did with? Tom York?
Tom York. Yeah, the
Anima.
Anima. Yeah,
that was pretty.
That
cool.
was like a science fiction almost.
Yeah.
And so, he's done a lot of that. It's clear he's interested visually in those things. But isn't it nice, like, that somebody like him is more willing to do versions like that than, like, say, I'm going to make a whole movie that is about, that's only interested in style like Soderbergh does, or the Coens do, like, that's like, I'm just going to do this. Like, no,
you can tell he enjoys that form as a chance to do stuff like that.
And so that's cool. Like, I'd rather him make an actual movie than do that all the time. So that's nice that he gets to do that here, because especially that first one I thought was especially different for him, and as far as the music video goes, it felt like very stylistically complex.
Well, I've heard him say before too, and I've heard versions of this from other directors some years ago. He said something along the lines of he wished he made more movies. He wished he lived in the studio system of like the 40s and 50s, where directors were working so often that they naturally hone their craft even more than certain
What's sad is
directors
that, and
do,
God bless these people, but he's basically at the beck and call of Annapurna or somebody who he's like, I need you to give me some money to make
this is officially
movie.
Also some other things to say about this. It's officially done by Warner Brothers, and it has a rumored budget of over $100 million. I know too has been said. So there's that about.
You know who should work together is him and Damon Packard, and there'd be something, wouldn't it? Damon Packard. But no, I'm into whatever this is.
Yeah,
be a lot of fun.
Speaking of
being into
creeping
things,
fascism.
Yeah.
The Zone of Interest, which is the latest Jonathan Glazer movie, his fourth movie. As far as what it's about, we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I'll just go through this real quick. It stars Christian Friedel as German Nazi Commandant Rudolf Haas, who strives to build a dream life with his wife, Hedwig, Sandra Huller, in a new home next to the German Auschwitz concentration camp. I can think of a lot of other places that would be better off building a home next to. But okay.
Well, we've talked a lot about this movie in the before this.
We talked about it back when we did
Sexy Beast, Stephen, because it was known that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So we've previewed it.
As I said back then, this was a movie I've been dreading. I've been dreading this movie for years. Not because I didn't think it would be any good, but because, of course, this is only his fourth movie. His other three are so idiosyncratic and so provocative in their own ways. And for me, I was just like, again, I have a very tricky idea about anything relating to the Holocaust or making a Holocaust movie. Deep down or not so deep down, frankly, I don't even want to see it. Not because it's not important, but because as I've gotten older, it just takes me to places that I don't really want to spend a lot of time in mentally. But we had this conversation. We saw it in Asheville at the Fine Arts Theater when we were coming back. You got to keep making movies about this because, of course, it's such a horrific event in human history that there's, you have to depict it. You have to shine light on it. But even beyond that, I think even some of the choices this movie made about how it is doing that are some things we're going to get into. Levi, you're a big Glazer fan. You were really anticipating this. What did you take away from The Zone of Interest as a work, not only the newest Jonathan Glazer movie, but also as a work trying to say and do some provocative things about depicting the Holocaust?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's very much a... First of all, this might be a weird place to start. He's very much a contemporary filmmaker. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a little weird to see him go and do a period piece, which is not something I would prefer him to do. I thought a lot about The Fall while I was watching this. So that short film he did, which is really great.
It is good.
That I know got a lot of comparisons at the time. It was like about fascism and kind of Trump era ideas and the right, and I mean it's an allegory and a metaphor. It's not a 1-to-1 specific thing. But that with that it that felt very effective to me in this kind of. Well, I feel like when he's at his best, it's with this cutting, immediate, visceral reaction that you get from watching his films.
Yeah.
I think about Under the Skin in that way, or Sexy Beast, or even Birth in its own way. Birth's a little slower, but so therefore this kind of falls outside the purview of all that we're talking about in the sense that it is, it is based on a novel, like pretty much all his work has been based more or less on. So I think Birth and Under the Skin have been, and so he's used to adapting things, but. This wasn't very much like the book either. I read parts of the book, and like you were saying earlier, I just couldn't get through that book. I was just like, I don't really want to read this. There's strains of that in the movie, ultimately, but it, I think another thing about this, and kind of the point of the movie, is that it's very methodical. Mm-hmm. Was that based on a novel, Birth? I assumed it was. Maybe it's not.
I don't think so.
No, okay, well, never mind.
Feels like it easily could be.
Yeah, I just assumed it was. And Under the Skin was based on that.
Yeah, it was.
Who wrote that?
Michelle Faber.
Oh, okay. I thought it was that guy. I thought it was somebody had to do with the Game of Thrones. Never mind. But so, I feel like when this movie's very, intentionally methodical about watching them live their lives, and it all seems very normal, as far as what the life is that they're living. But it's what is effective about this is the constant pressure and knowledge and weight of Auschwitz being literally right there, and that's what this is all for. What I appreciated about it, and he talked about this in the Cannes press conference, he wanted to make everything feel as new as possible while still being in 1943, but that everything looks very polished and new and nice and all very orderly, and everything's very domesticated. And it's just that idea of, I guess, people pampering themselves while people are literally being treated as less than animals, like just over the wall,
ritualistically and summarily executed.
Right, and so that doesn't stray from that either. I mean, what's interesting about the movie is it actually dealt more with that idea than I expected, in the sense that they would, openly speak about this is happening.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of ideology in the movie in that sense, but there's scenes where he's meeting with, all right, what's the efficiency plan? Okay, now we have to determine who's going to be the leader of the camp, or do you need to be more over that efficiency, or you just want to be a leader of the camp? What is it,
Yeah.
And there is a lot of detail about that. The point ultimately, though, is to show us and kind of break the fallacy, and I think a lot of people know this already, but break the fallacy that the German made for themselves after the war, that we didn't know what was happening, or we were fooled or we were held captive or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And obviously these are people who are like SS officers and family members of them, but at the same time, even just the regular German citizens saying, oh yeah, we just didn't know what was going on. Like, just what an outright, lie that was, let alone the fantasy you'd have to create in your mind to even believe such a thing.
Right.
And so
going into this, I was curious to what extent the children would be aware of what was going on, and it felt like, there was one scene in particular I keep thinking about of one of the smaller boys, like, kind of looking out of his window. And
he's hearing
another thing is, too, we don't really see anything visually as far as a murder taking place or whatnot. But we know that's what's going on. You hear screams, and the soundscape of this movie is very
somebody had
sophisticated
stolen,
not
stolen, had taken one of the apples that one of the girls was giving, putting at night. She would go, one of the people that worked there would go, and that was such a refreshing thing to see, by the way, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that her putting out food for them, and then somebody got caught and they were, I think, shot and killed, and the boy is like hearing that. So go on.
Anyways, it seemed like though that the kids were very, pretty much aware of it. The older brother had said some things, I don't even remember what he said, but like saying something about the Jews being less than, or whatever. The wife was very much aware of it, and even going as far as to threaten some of the help that worked for him that were Jewish women. So, and to that extent, this is a really well-made movie. I think it has really good intentions. Let me just say that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to me, the chief problem of the movie is to stare into the abyss for so long. Not only to stare in the abyss for so long, but, like, to not have any sort of, like... And I want to be very careful how I say this, but to not have anything at all you can empathize, then it becomes a museum piece. Then it becomes something you're just watching people behave, and that there's nothing to really grasp on to have any sense of connection with these people. Again, I think what he was going for was... I think he achieved and he accomplished in terms of the separation and the extent to which we can be on the outside of this and see these people act this way. But there's a certain lack of dramatic tension that happens when we're not involved in their story to any extent. I just feel I feel like I'm an alien watching from another planet.
Can I defend it from that front for a moment? I think part of what does sort of work about that to me in the intention is the idea that the whole story is a domestic drama of, do we need to move? Is our family in jeopardy? But this is what the stakes are. This is what it's about, and kind of taking the family drama, even of the 1940s especially. Think about Meet Me in St. Louis, for example, or of that era of saying, oh, the family has to be moved, and taking that, but then totally subverting it to say, but this is why these people feel this way, and this is this. Now, I agree with you. There's not sympathy that can be gotten out of that, but maybe that is
even as I say that, I feel dumb saying it out loud, because a movie's not supposed to necessarily make us feel sympathy or empathy for people. That's not inherently what a movie's aim should be. Now, a movie can want to do that, and certain movies can. I feel dumb for even saying it out loud.
I think that's what a film's chief's missions, but it doesn't have to be.
It is very much a movie driven by aesthetic choices.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine, but what that means is that I'm removed from feeling even complicit. I don't feel the least bit complicit in anything anyone in this movie does. I don't think he's wanting
you to either.
Because, there's just such a remove between me and them that... one of the most shocking moments of the movie, to spoil it at the very end, is when it all of a sudden jumps to the modern day and shows some of these same places as museum pieces, and as these women who are just sweeping these floors and cleaning this glass, and on the other side of it are the various artifacts that remain at Auschwitz as a museum piece. And that in of itself was almost made me think, you know what, this could have been a short film, and not even just a 10-minute short film. It could have been a 40, 50-minute short film, and that almost was... that almost felt like the itch he was wanting to scratch the whole time, and it kind of is revealed at the very end. Well, again, a lot of the things I just said, I feel like I could hear somebody else say, and I'd roll my eyes a little bit and go, "Oh, you just need to toughen up, and just this is a serious thing, and you just need to get over it, and you need to." But again, as somebody who thinks that we need to, and it's necessary to make films about this subject matter, just the pure sense of remove from it, to me, alienated me and left me cold, even more so than what the subject matter inherently was.
Yeah, well,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, though, that with that, as far as... I lost my train of thought, what I was going to say. Hang on a second. As far as with this movie, though, I think that... I really just lost my train of thought. One thing I'll say is... and kind of to get what you're saying about it, I think is like that we're not seeing anything, and so it's wanting to almost... Oh, I remember. Well, I'll get to that in a second. It's almost wanting to not inspire empathy exactly, but it's just, oh, nothing's going on. But then there's that, you probably remember it, that one shot in the movie that is kind of inside the camp.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's like shot from just below him, and there's smoke, and he's standing there just like looking, and there's just this, not even somebody literally, but just this screaming cacophony.
I feel like that's the most direct the movie
right,
gets.
And so I want, when I say this, I think you know what I mean. I want more of that. I want more of that feeling. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's like not where I want to be, but I want the movie to put me where I don't want to be. You know what I mean? Like, and so like, I'm not saying it's disrespectful to not show those things, because we all know what that is by now. Mm-hmm. But it's almost, like I said, I don't want to use the word disrespectful, but it's kind of skewing the experience over to say, well, look at what these people's lives were. But to get to the point I was trying to make, that I'd finally remembered, it's not wanting us to empathize so much or to implicate as it is, or to like make us complicit, as it is to say, look at how easy it is to block out the horror of life where people are, having trouble. Now, this is different than even regular life that we live, obviously, but like looking at the ignorance of, or the not
willful
even
ignorance.
Yeah, well, I was going to say there's two types of ignorance. There's ignorance and there's ignorance, which means ignoring something. I think sometimes ignorance is not knowing. Ignoring is knowing and not caring, or knowing and caring that, yes, that's a positive.
And the only person in this movie at all is the wife's mother, kind of comes to visit, and and I did appreciate this, there's no big scene where she's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what's going on, I'm leaving. She just leaves.
Looks out the window.
Yeah, there's that one moment where she knows what's going on, and she's like, I can't be in this. And,
well, she knew what they were doing there anyway, but I think to see it for her was the part she couldn't stand. So, in that sense, I think that the movie works on a aesthetic and technical level to say, look at how easy it is for these people to live this life next to this.
Yeah.
Which, not to get too graphic, but I would think they wouldn't be able to stand it just because of the smell more than anything. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But to your point, that doesn't make for a compelling movie all the time.
Again, this I think to me he's successful on an aesthetic level of trying to explore some of this stuff. But I don't remember if we mentioned Kubrick at all, and when we talked about people, filmmakers who are labeled cold or have certain things that people are slightly turned off by. And again, I can understand where that comes from with Kubrick, but there were always these technical aspects that were transformational for cinema with Kubrick's movies. But also, there were still these human things about them. There was these snippets of humanity, and sometimes even bigger versions of that. But like, you take a movie like A Clockwork Orange, a movie that we don't particularly like all that much.
We did it on the podcast.
We've done it on the podcast. We've talked about it in the past, but that's a movie that I don't really like all that much, and I don't even think about all that much.
I don't either.
But there is like this ironic thing going on between the horrors of what Alex is and his his clan are doing to people, juxtaposed with the institutional horrors of, well, if they're doing that, we have to do this to rid ourselves of such people. And that juxtaposition of those horrors, even though the movie itself does kind of leave one, quote, cold, is intellectually compelling enough for me to go, well, okay, this is a movie worthy of being made. Now, I'm not saying Zone of Interest is not worthy of being made, of course, but what I mean by that is that that's still, even for a movie that I kind of find disgusting, and I don't find this movie, quote, disgusting on a moral or ethical level, but I am unmoved by it, which is strange to say about something that we all know how horrible this is, and this is literally one of the greatest failures in human history that this movie's depicting. But that aesthetic, level lacked a humanity, and willfully lacked humanity, I think, to the point where it, for me, kind of loses a thread. Yeah, well, and it has to kind of that tracks. Yeah,
I've kind of said this already, but to defend it once more a little bit is that it's ultimately not, I don't think, a movie that's wanting to stake itself in this is the lone or specific Holocaust document. Yeah. It's essentially trying to subvert Holocaust documents in the sense that it's saying we all know that the Nazis are evil. So rather, like, for example, and this is not at all to make the Jews evil. Let me go ahead and say that. First of all, that should be obvious. But that to do the, like, night vision sequences with the Jewish girl that's riding around putting the apples where the Jews could eat them during the day, that would be the sequence in any random movie where the Nazis are all seen as this villainous, like, monstrous, like, roaming through the night, and they're like this weird, mysterious villain or blah, 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 like, that instead of putting the Jews at the center of it, like would have been done with The Diary of Anne Frank, for example, the 1950s version of that, then instead it's trying to say, let's make the Nazis the main characters and then make that its own background thing. And so I'm not saying that's even a correct way to do it. I'm just saying he wanted to do something a little different, clearly, and that's how he felt he wanted to do it, which makes sense to me, like I said, on an aesthetic and a thematic level whilst looking at other Holocaust art, but that doesn't mean it, like I said, it works in the way that you're saying, which I think is true.
I think you're right about that. That was his intentions with it. I think, just this subject matter alone is incredibly sensitive. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much you've read about it or thought about it.
It's natural to feel weird about this movie. I think if you just walk out of it and are totally wrapped with it or totally hate it, it's kind of strange to me either way. Because,
again, I do find...
Well, the movie, and we should mention
the mission for it admirable in terms of, again, as you said, him trying to approach it from a different angle or lens. That lens, just for me, was not quite.
Well, and it's shot at a remove too. There's really no close-ups. It's all medium shots or long shots. Very intentional, and that, like I said, that's an intentional reason for that as well. So that kind of sums up the movie, I think, right there, is that there's no close-up or very few close-ups. So
the biggest thing for me is I'm glad this movie's over and I can move on from.
I know what you mean.
For him. Because it also made me think a little bit about what Kubrick's Holocaust movie could have been, the Aryan Papers, which was he developed, I think, throughout most of the 90s.
I think there would have been more. I think that movie would have been more emotional than this, even still.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. But it would have been. I mean, it probably would have been a little more like Full Metal Jacket, but less funny and a little more, I think, heartfelt than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to know.
You have to remember he's the one who said with AI, no, you need to do that ending and not the original ending.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on that, I'm not sure what his Aryan Papers would have been, but yeah.
Well, Eyes Wide Shut ends on a shockingly positive note for what that movie is. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, who knows what that would have been. But, it's hard to say were you, quote, disappointed by this movie because it's the type of art you don't want to necessarily use in those terms, but as somebody who was anticipating it, how would you categorize it? No, not really.
I mean, I expected it to be a little better, but by the end I wasn't disappointed so much as I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, because it was more or less what I thought it was going to be.
I will say the movie's not as long as it could have been.
No, it's actually pretty short.
Yeah.
but relatively. But yeah, it shouldn't have been as long as it was even then.
Yeah.
And sadly, the thing to cut is probably some of the Jewish stuff in it. If you're gonna, just as far as what the movie is, if you need to cut anything, that's probably what you cut. But
yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. It's just kind of, like I said, in a way, I'm glad it's over too. That way, he can just move on to whatever other thing he wants to make in another 10 years, I guess. So, yeah.
Check it out if you have the.
It's rated
interest
PG-13.
in
Also,
going into
it should
something
be
like
said,
this.
so it's not terribly graphic, but it's a movie that is also rated R or even X, as far as what it is. Or NC-17, as far as what it is, emotion, or like the not emotionally in the sense of like the emotionality, but what it is and is about would affect you on an emotional level, I think. But yeah.
So, well, we're gonna do something a little different before we get into Contempt and Pierrot le Fou. As I said, both of these movies, they kind of have a, I don't know what it is. Like I said, just like they're both part of a chapter of 60s Godard, and they both have different things to say. But we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to kind of separate them in the very clear-cut way that we normally do.
Yeah.
Although we are going to talk about what is Contempt in its own context and what is Pierrot le Fou in its own context. But we're going to just go ahead and play the trailers for both of them back-to-back. And then we're going to kind of obviously talk about them individually, but there's probably going to be a free flow back and forth, so we're going to do something a little different with these because we're talking about Godard here. So here are the trailers for both Contempt and Pierrot le Fou.
Bientôt. Sur cet écran, la femme,
l'homme,
l'Italie,
le cinéma,
avec Brigitte Bardot
et Michel Piccoli, l'Alfa Romeo,
le music-hall,
la statue grecque,
le revolver,
le nouveau film traditionnel de Jean-Luc Godard,
la gifle,
la chambre à coucher,
le baiser,
la salle de bain,
avec Jacques Palance, Georges Gabol et Fritz Lang,
le fou,
la starlette,
le vieil homme,
la mer. D'après le célèbre roman d'Alberto Moravia, la tendresse,
la vengeance,
les caresses,
la souffrance.
Photographié dans toute la magie du Franscope et du Technicolor,
L'escalier,
la promenade,
le livre,
le bateau,
une tragique histoire d'amour dans un décor merveilleux,
les disputes,
le soleil,
la trahison,
la mort,
une merveilleuse histoire d'amour dans un décor tragique, l'amour,
l'obscurité,
les malentendus,
la beauté fatale.
fatale.
Tendre et cruel, réel et surréel, terrifiant et marrant, nocturne et diurne, solite et insolite, beau comme tout.
C'était un film d'aventure.
Son sang coulait de 1000 blessures et il combattait seul, car il avait juré de ne pas reculer d'un pouce.
C'était un roman d'amour.
Sortir d'un mauvais rêve.
C'était un film d'aventure.
Ah, quelle terrible 5 heures du soir.
C'était un roman d'amour.
Nous vîmes des paysages d'hiver et des paysages d'été.
Compère, vous mentez. Compère, qu'as-tu vu?
J'ai vu le café où Van Gogh, un soir terrible, a décidé de se couper l'oreille.
Une saison en enfer.
Un poète qui s'appelle Revolver.
Robert Browning.
M'échapper.
Jamais.
Bien aimé.
Tant que je serai moi.
Et que tu seras toi.
Cela ressemble trop à la fatalité.
Un petit port comme dans les romans de Conrad.
Un bateau à voile, comme dans les romans de Stevenson.
Un ancien bordel comme dans les romans de Faulkner.
C'était un film d'aventure.
C'est comme pendant la guerre d'Algérie.
C'était un roman d'amour.
La recherche du temps disparu.
Les jours passent.
Une surprise partie chez Monsieur et Madame Expresso.
C'était un film d'aventure.
La prise de Constantinople, l'histoire de Nicolas de Staël et de son suicide, je sais pas.
Des siècles et des siècles s'enfuirent dans le lointain, comme des orages.
L'amour est à réinventer.
La vraie vie est ailleurs.
Marianne Renoir.
C'était un roman d'amour.
Tendre et cruel, réel et surréel, terrifiant et marrant, nocturne et diurne, solide et insolite, beau comme tout.
Pierrot le Fou.
Jean-Luc Godard.
I really recommend you seek those trailers out just to watch them on your own because obviously they're in French. We don't speak French.
Nope.
You probably don't either. But the visuals of them kind of married with that. And I feel like especially with the Contempt trailer, and this goes right into the talking about the movie too, is a very meta trailer and is very much playing on these character types in movies and how Godard is, of course, going to subvert those. Just to talk a little bit about Contempt, 1963 French New Wave drama, written and directed by Jean-Luc Godard, based on the 1954 Italian novel, which translates to A Ghost at Noon. I'm not sure exactly how you say that in Italian. About Alberto Moravia, stars Brigitte Bardot,
Michel Piccoli, Jack Palance, Fritz Lang. That Jack Palance picture, I can is wow. Every time I see it, I'm shocked.
Yeah. And Georgia Mall.
I'm just assuming that's how
it's impossible not to talk that way. So this is a few Godard movies in. Of course, Breathless is his first movie, followed by A Woman is a Woman.
Seen that.
My Life to Live.
Seen that.
The Little Soldier.
Seen that.
And the Carabiners.
Yep.
How do you say that? So this is after that. We talked about this a little bit last week, but for you, Levi, when you think about Godard, his place in the French New Wave, and this movie, which is your favorite, I think definitely from him. How does that orient yourself when it comes to your cinematic impressions of Godard, what he means, and how Contempt fits into that?
Well, I feel like it's his most easily accessible, also, other than maybe Breathless.
Breathless, maybe, but
because at least Breathless takes the the genre tropes of noir and kind of crime
Frenchifies it,
cinema, and takes it into the new French New Wave, and so therefore people are going to find that easier to kind of go into even than this narratively.
And it does have some stylistic flourishes, obviously, but not nearly as much as some of these later movies do.
This, obviously, I think, is pretty normal stylistically overall.
Yeah.
It's mostly just scenes of dialogue. But he uses editing in the sense of memory, of recalling past events, but it's done in a way that's obviously very foreign to America.
Was also, but as you said earlier, that there's a narrative reasoning behind that.
Yeah,
some of his other movies, some of these leaps of editing logic are purely for essayistic or political purposes.
Yeah, or just to do, like in Breathless, there's that famous example people use of like normally in a movie before that you would have had Jean-Paul Belmondo walking up stairs. And showing all the shots of that, but instead it shows him going in the building, the camera tilts up real fast, and then it's him going through a door in there and saying, let's go quicker with this.
Akin to the jump cut, which funny enough, was actually done just to shorten the movie at first.
Yeah.
It was just because they needed to edit it, they needed to get a shorter runtime, so they're like, well, let's just jump cut. And that, that right there is a great example of, necessity and limitations spurring style.
Yeah, right. And so, anyway, in this, it's a lot more just like, use, like I say, memory and that sense of repetition of thoughts of characters,
Yeah.
But in that sense, I feel like another thing to say is that obviously most of his movies, especially around this time, especially Breathless, A Woman is a Woman, Vivre sa vie and Le Petit Soldat don't really fall into that, but then this and then A Band Apart all really are examining the idea of American or the genre film and kind of the genre tropes and tropes of American film, tropes even of French film, but they saw that as more negative and thus more emulated American film. But with one of the things I notice about that here is that repetition of that same piece of music, which we call the Contempt music because it's in Casino as well. We talked about that at the time when we did Casino.
Which, of all the quotations that Scorsese does in his movies of other filmmakers, Godard is not one that normally filters its way into Scorsese's canon. So it's interesting that music is something that he intentionally very much, which I feel like if you're drawing thematics between Casino and Contempt, the glitz, the glamour, but the emptiness of those things. I mean, there's a clear line that can be drawn between them.
Right. And so, in kind of his ideas about what, American, his view of American ideas of European cinema, or Americans co-opting of someone like Fritz Lang for American cinema,
which he did. He came to America and made some American movies.
And same thing had happened even years before that with von Sternberg. I mean, that happened with a lot of people that come to America and make movies, obviously. And seeing Jack Palance as this totally evil, contemptible figure,
and it kind of makes you scratch your head and shake it, even though you understand that that's Godard's representation of America in this movie is Jack Palance.
And there's another representation.
Totally disgusting, immoral, amoral.
Yeah, well, there's another representation of America in Pierrot le Fou as well, but we'll get to that shortly. But also what's strange about that is him thinking that, but then also reconciling the idea of, his love of American cinema.
I mean, Nicholas Ray is mentioned in various extents in both of these movies, and he had a quote one time, I'm paraphrasing, said something along the lines of like, cinema is Nicholas Ray, and so he had a very clear love of, and then Samuel Fuller cameos in Pierrot le Fou, and there's obviously he has a lot of affection for him, and that's the whole Godard aesthetic, and I say that with both respect and sometimes annoyance, is this love and hatred of cinema all at once, which is his whole MO, which this movie, because Contempt especially is about,
and so the whole.
The phoniness, but the beauty of the phoniness.
Yeah, and the narrative is ultimately also about the idea of I will do this movie if you love me or not, and kind of what does it mean about artistic expression coming through love, and isn't that kind of fraudulent because love doesn't last?
Right.
And then, let's say these are all his opinions, not mine.
Yeah.
But and kind of, I find that to be a very interesting and compelling question. To make the movie about making movies, but not really about making movies. It's more about the emotions that inspire the making of movies.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's why it's so successful. Is what it's about is more specific, and it has stylistic flourishes, but it's more interested in just saying, let's just investigate these people in this story, and really think about it, rather than like jumping through all these hoops and doing all and making it the essay film that he did with like Pierrot le Fou or Weekend or something, years or La Chinoise or Masculine and Feminine, or his later 60s work was a lot more in your face political and not really caring about
Weekend being the height of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Not really caring about anything.
Yeah.
But
this is definitely one of my favorites from him. And I think for me it is, it's and his movies were already doing this, but one thing that I kind of wrote here was the idea of movies about movies. And, you know, I think that's something we take for granted now because cinema, really ever since the French New Wave, and you can point to other times it's been before this, but especially since the French New Wave, and this is why it was such an influence on the Hollywood, or New Hollywood, is the idea that cinema is at a certain age, let's roughly say 60-ish years into cinema's existence, I mean, if you say it in a rough way, of cinema starting to look inward, cinema starting to wonder and look around the world and say, to what impact have we had on the world? What impact can we have on the world? And I think, again, that this in particular is a moment in Godard's career where he was most singularly interested in that. I've not seen a lot of Godard stuff going from the 70s onward. It's my understanding that his movies were always, and not always, for the most part, still meta, but not in the not with the level of self-consciousness that they perhaps had during this particular moment. But again, that was part of the French New Wave's novelty, was this idea of, we're not exactly going to depict reality, but we're instead going to depict a reality through cinema, because we, as this generation of artists, have been raised on cinema, and perhaps that's why cinema was becoming more meta and more self-conscious around this time, because you were starting to have your first directors who were not principally artisans, but instead fans, which of course is what the French New Wave, that's how that came about, was that they were fans of cinema. So I think in that way, this is one of the most quintessential Godardian movies, is that it, you know, it's about his reckoning with not only cinema is life and life is cinema, but like it's narrativizing of what the process of making a movie is. And for him and a lot of Europeans, making a movie during this time was like to live it out and to find the movie as you were making it, you know.
Right.
At this particular era in Hollywood, at this moment, we're in the last vestiges of the classic Hollywood, you know, era.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, we're not going to acknowledge that cinema is a, you know, is an art exactly, that's around the corner, but that we're going to instead try to make people forget and entertain them. And while people will certainly acknowledge this is indeed cinema, they are not thinking about what that means.
Yeah.
But these movies were. And I think that that's what one of Godard's chief innovations with the French New Wave was that he was somebody who was willing to hold the mirror up to the camera. I mean, literally the opening shot of this movie is camera turning on camera, right? It's the camera of the movie being made within the movie turning on the camera that is making this movie. Because, you know, I'm not a scholar of Truffaut, Francois Truffaut. His vision is one that's certainly obviously more humanist than Godard's is, and naturally, inherently is going to appeal more to me on an artistic level than what Godard's is.
Right.
But, you know, you take a movie like, and he made other movies than this, but his first movie, 400 Blows, is about a certain like era of like French neorealism, might not be quite the word because that was more of an Italian phenomenon, but like more of like we're gonna show you what life really is, as opposed to Breathless is I'm gonna make a genre movie that is self-conscious. You know what I mean? Those are different things, and so I think that's one of the things that has actually aged best about Godard is him as a provocateur, because, you know, I don't want to talk too much about Pierrot le Fou yet, but Pierrot le Fou would now be like a TikTok that somebody of that generation made.
I think about that with Weekend a lot too, as far as like his films became increasingly more monologue and dialogue heavy, and like,
I mean, there were political tracks being handed out by reels.
Right. And it's kind of like, I think about Weekend in particular, having almost no structure whatsoever. I mean, it literally is kind of about nothing, even more than this is.
And it's got a very, very, very loose one, but it's almost to hang these vignettes on that the movie has.
And that I really wish people made movies like that now, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really like that movie, but like the feeling of that movie to be like for example, the way that movie opens, I think about a lot, where it's like man and woman in dark room talking about sexual experience, them arguing with family outside house, them getting caught in traffic jam, and it feels like there's a lot of ideas going on there, and it's like none of it's really coming together. You know what I mean?
It's at least like trying to do something.
Right, but I'm saying I wish people made, like you're saying, like these political track kind of movies, like here's the thing, and now that's what YouTube and TikTok are for. But I want to see somebody make a movie like that.
Twitter, yeah.
Right. And no, you give me your ideas
in
a shotgun
that
blast.
Naturally, is because there were more movies made back then.
Right.
Period.
Yes.
So there were more cracks at the bat that you could do stuff like that.
Right.
Now, one movie's such a fragile gamble. It's like, will it make enough? And that's one of the saddest things about the state of cinema today is when that happens, that means that you're going to have less things like this that are just, or even on the wholly opposite end, like, we're just going to do like a dozen Rock Hudson, Doris Day movies, like on the other end of it too, of just like where you just have all these chances to try and fail. Yeah. You have the chance to do something like Mickey 1, which is like its attempt to do. I know it's a really random thing to throw in this, but like this really random like, oh, I'm going to try to do a French New Wave thing, and it's not going to be, but it's not going to ruin Warren Beatty's career. You know what I mean? It's like now, is the new Glenn Powell movie going to make enough money to for him to keep making movies? It's also
or you're going to make like Medium Cool or Downhill Racer out of that,
right? And now everything is such a gamble, and there's so much money involved in movies that what the expense of that is the freedom to do anything, do whatever. Even a movie like Pierrot le Fou, we'll talk about later, like, that movie's got a lot of strands that just sometimes just fall flat and are like, okay, what are you doing here? But, and even in the Godard movies, I really do not like or hate, and that, by the way, Pierrot le Fou is not one of those. For me, I'm still like, even in the ones I don't like, I'm like, whoa, you're really going for it. You're really trying. You're really doing something. And I think one reason why Contempt really stands out as among his most polished films is because it is kind of before he gets really political later in the decade, like it's his like movie about movies to the most movie extent, # movies, and about the whole idea of, well, I love you now, but I might not love you later, and really I'm going to love to the extent to which it's convenient for me, and I'm going to cut you out of my life in the same way I would cut you out of a script. And the kind of mercenary, obviously amoral way to view life or living is. But nonetheless, for Godard, that is his truth. That is his, and so even when I object to what his truth is, I still am like, well, I respect your right to say it.
And even in the
even
sense
if I don't
also,
agree with it.
looking at that from another direction of the idea of, why do you not love me? Why do you not love me? Why are you not loving me anymore? Do you want to love that person very much anymore when they keep asking you that question? You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like that the movie actually goes kind of both ways in that sense of like understanding why this is falling apart.
Yes.
Is it's both. It's a mutual destruction.
To that end, I actually want to read, this is a quote from Anna Karenina, who of course was the co-lead of Pierrot le Fou.
Is it Anna Karenina or Anna Karenina?
Anna Karenina, I think that's how you say her name.
Or Anna Karina or whatever.
Karina.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. This is on her Wikipedia page, because I was kind of curious. She died in 2019. So,
yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
And she was married to Godard from 61 to 65.
And then he got married to that other woman that was in some of his other movies. Anne Wazaminsky. Or Wazimsky, however you say that. She was in La Chinoise, also was in the Bresson film Ahazar Balthazar. But yeah. Anyway.
So this was a quote she said about her relationship with him, which I think actually speaks to what even this Contempt's about. It was all very exciting from the beginning. Of course, we have a great love story and all that, but we were so different. He was 10 years older than me. He was very strange. He would go away and come back 3 weeks later. It was difficult, and I was a young girl, not even 21. At the time, Godard was 30. I know he didn't mean to hurt me, but he did. He was never there. He was never coming back, and I never knew where he was. He drove me a bit crazy. Don't you see that relationship between Bardot in this and Piccoli? That it's essentially that, like, well, I'm going to kind of go do my thing. I've got to go, quote, find the movie. And her kind of not only boredom with that, but her feeling of naturally rejection that she feels from that. And I feel like, that had to be going on between them while he's making Contempt. I mean, I don't know totally the timeline there, but that has to be a representation of that. When it comes to, like, for you summarizing Contempt's legacy within Godard's filmography, what for it is you?
I think him at his height of understanding the interaction between cinema and one's own life, as in romance. I feel like he did that more with politics later.
Yeah.
Kind of in the midst of the dissolution of that marriage, I guess.
Yeah.
In him feeling that, I can't make this sustain, so what is life then? If not love, then it must be politics. And I don't know. I don't want to psychoanalyze him. But in that sense, I think that's where it stands. And also just as him as really getting his most complex ideas into this most packaged version of itself to send out to the world, of saying it's not going to be this crazy stylistic thing, but it's also not going to be the most normal thing ever, and it's going to play with the idea of international cinema, of having Jack Palance and Fritz Lang playing himself, Fritz Lang playing himself, Jack Palance representing an American, speaking in English, and then there's translations there. But I like that it's a movie in 1963 that doesn't treat me like an idiot, like a lot of American movies did of the time. And I think there are American movies that were better even that year, maybe even than this, maybe even The Birds, I don't know. But like, but that's all just and that movie's its own totally like weird thing.
That's when Hitchcock himself was getting more transgressive.
Right, he was getting almost more French New Wave in its own way, or more European. That movie's just so great. We should do that on here one of these days, because I know we talked about it and have done Hitchcock before. But
well, even Hitchcock, that's an interesting person to mention in this, because I didn't even really think about him, because he's obviously making movies in America. He's British though.
Truffaut was a big fan of his, and I think that Godard probably was as well, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what he thought.
I've never heard his thoughts on Hitchcock.
But like, it is interesting you mentioned him, because Hitchcock was known in America for making like very successful but sometimes rote stories of, well, it's a whodunit, or well, it's it's a detective story or a mystery or whatever it is. But what's so, why his cinema goes to the stratosphere with like Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds, that run, as the stories themselves are pretty simple.
Yeah.
But it's that stylistic, aesthetic, like...
and thematic,
like, density that is, like, why they're still among the most iconic movies of all time, is that they are such rich.
You think about the tennis
style,
match in Strangers on a Train.
A little earlier, but yeah.
And it's like, okay, like... it's just tennis
well
match,
done,
like,
well done.
But you're like...
yeah,
this is life, like because of what's going on, and like I say, it's the same thing. Marnie, especially if you want to go
all those
further
movies
that
too.
way.
There's an aesthetic, stylistic perversity,
yes,
to each of them too, which was a
a
lot was lost on a lot of audiences.
Well, what's funny is it's kind of, and I actually go back and watch this video a lot, and I highly recommend it. I can't remember the guy who made it. Oh, cinematographer. Makes really great video essays.
Oh yeah, I know somebody.
Awesome, like probably one of the best video essay people.
I haven't seen any of those in a while. But
really great. He made one on the French New Wave that's really good. And it's actually, I saw it in college. They actually showed part of it. We were talking about, we had seen
Breaking the Rules. Is that what it says?
Yes.
It's actually got a The thumbnail is from Pierrot le Fou.
Yeah. We had watched part of that after we had watched this movie, Pierrot le Fou, and we were talking about it. Great, but one thing that's always stuck in my craw about that video is it's talking about American cinema's use of editing or use of setups about man does this, man gets in car, man
and
drives,
it uses Hitchcock.
and he uses Vertigo scenes,
well,
and I'm
that
like,
is very,
and I'm just like, are you literally are you brain damaged? Like literally, that was other than being great, was also beloved by them as far as what it was and the express. Like, of course, yeah,
that's
they
why Nicholas
changed,
Ray, a different director we mentioned earlier, he was
Yeah.
also beloved by them because the stylistic.
Yeah, because for
intensity
them
of
it
those
wasn't so
movies.
much about the editing. I know people focus on the editing. To them, it was about the expressionistic nature of their films. I mean, Vertigo is one of the most expressionistic movies ever made.
Color and lighting has a lot to do with that.
And so for them, we have to also. I mean, I know we think of Godard sometimes and Truffaut in that sense of black and white with Truffaut with 400 Blows, Shoot the Piano Player, Jules and Jim, like
Breathless
soft
with Godard,
skin,
yeah.
and then Breathless, Alphaville, Vivre
that's
sa
a pretty good
vie.
movie.
Yeah, I like Alphaville. That's actually one of my more favorites from him. The fight scene in that is just hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, Band of Outsiders, or Band Apart, all those movies. Like, and we think of that, but then you see a movie like this, like Contempt, or even Pierrot le Fou, which I think is his best looking movie and most well made, or even Weekend in that way. What I like about that, it's a little more ugly intentionally, I think. But that's one of the few things I like about that movie. But which is a movie I think a lot about for not liking it. But that was what that was to them. Not always the way that it broke the rules of the American cinema, and that they further did that with their own, of hating the French cinema before. I don't remember the name for that.
What's it called? The cinema of tradition or something along those lines.
But like Jean Renoir, oh gosh, what's his name? Jean, the guy that made Autolant. What's his name? Jean Vigo.
Yeah.
Jean Vigo, and like all those older filmmakers, or Fouillade or whoever, which are all, by the way, great. Which I think is hilarious. That it's like, man, you didn't like that. I think what more their problem is that like middle period, that like 40s, 50s, like. Not that Renoir wasn't still making films, but that they were more disinterested in, or I guess were like, why are you not emulating American cinema, or why are you viewing American cinema as lesser than? Or so I get that, from their point of view.
Well, they were among the first to think of cinema more as an art form.
Yes.
That was not going on in America kind of prior to this in a serious way.
But think about from the perspective of, and I know we're actually talking about a lot about Truffaut here, but think about from the perspective of either the French or the American public at the time, seeing him sit down with Alfred Hitchcock, write a book,
Hitchcock,
all that, interviews, and him really like interviewing him, like, man, your movies, just imagine from that perspective then. And I don't think this is true or even 1-to-1, but that's like if Quentin Tarantino sat down and talked to Michael Bay. Man, your movie, or Tony Scott, even.
Yeah.
His love for Tony Scott. Now, this is also to say that Tarantino is not really a fan of art cinema, so maybe let's say Scorsese instead. Let's say Scorsese sits down, talks to Michael Bay or something, and it's like, I know that sounds stupid, and like, well, of course, Alfred Hitchcock married Michael Bay, and no, we are never going to be to that point where Michael Bay is Alfred Hitchcock.
Hypothetical, I'm just thinking about randomly pairing people in my head. Would be like James Gray sitting down with Sean Levy, just like
and so like something like that.
I had to mention Gray because he has some of the most beautiful things I've ever heard said about cinema in the Hitchcock Truffaut documentary talking about Vertigo is some of my favorite. He totally lays bare the greatness of Vertigo and how he talks about it. But
and so that's all just to say.
He sits down with Sean Levy though.
At that time, that was
what were you thinking with that one?
That was seen as like, what really about American public also.
I think too, it was shocked that it was even seen in such terms. Period.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what Andrew Sarris or Pauline Kael exactly thought of Hitchcock. I'm sure to them, they probably felt the same way about him that those critics and later directors of the Nouvelle Vague felt about, 40s and 50s French filmmakers, in the sense that they were like, we're just kind of tired of this. We've seen this. We've done that. But for those opposite people, that thing was cool,
Right.
And
a name we haven't mentioned at all, we should inject in the conversation to some extent, is Orson Welles.
Yeah.
Was himself a bridge between what Hollywood cinema was and what European art cinema was, and he was kind of this middle
Definitely,
ground,
we talked about him with, especially The Lady from Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like watching that, you can see very clearly, wow, or Touch of Evil, even more. You can see, wow, that's almost getting into that French New Wave stylistic, like.
Well, in some ways, that was the furthest ends of noir. If you're
Yes,
thinking about
right.
it's like a map. It's like it's on the outskirts of noir, and then that's getting closer
Outskirts
to what
of New Orleans. So I thought you were saying.
but because French New Wave still didn't,
New Orleans,
still didn't
to feed up off of hey, my freedom. Now we're just going through the radio here. Sorry,
because French New Wave didn't really come about until like 10 years after even say Lady from Shanghai, but that was inspirational.
Not too long after Touch of Evil, but
right,
or even like The Big Heat, or but so and also another movie I saw, The Naked Kiss, being kind of like, or not naked, yes, Samuel Fuller's films in the 60s at that time. I meant to say Kiss Me Deadly is very much like,
Robert
from the
Aldridge,
very opening, is very much like, oh, this feels weird. This feels different. Like, so that all just goes to say, I don't remember where we were on this, but basically just that, that
he was, again, he was a voice who was willing to take all this stuff in. Right. And not only do his own version of it, but make it self-conscious in a way that even other French New Wave directors were not necessarily
So that
doing.
idea that seeing both Jack Palance as evil, but also indicative of wanting to even try to hire Fritz Lang, wanting to even try to make the Odyssey in Italy.
Well, I think the Palance character in this represents like the American producer of this era who wasn't exactly in love with art cinema, but wanted the legitimacy and the artistic renown that it received in Europe, that he wanted a piece of that in
and I'm sure he was, very much beloved by Godard in the sense that he had been in The Big Knife. I know that was a movie that a lot of, a big noir that a lot of people loved. Also Shane. But I feel like that fits that. Yeah, like you said, I think that fits that character. He's really great in this, by the way. I love Jack Palance.
Yeah, I mean, every second he's on screen, you're like, oh god.
You never know what he's gonna do.
Yeah,
it's very like shocking. It's very visceral. And that pairing of him and Fritz Lang is so strange. It's like I never would have thought that would have happened ever.
Yeah. That's not two people you would immediately assume to go.
But so that's all to say that's a very successful, very succinct, I think, version of what he wants to say about movies. Then there's Pierrot le Fou.
Just to go through what that is about real quick. Pierrot le Fou, which translates to Pierre the Fool.
Or Crazy Pierre, it said in the trailer. Or Pierrot. Yeah. That's not even his name either in the movie, but anyway.
1965. So this is like 2 years later. And between these is Band of Outsiders, Married Woman, and Alphaville.
Yeah.
Were all made kind of between these. Romantic crime, French New Wave romantic crime drama road film. Written and directed by Jean-Luc Godard, starring Jean-Paul Belmondo. He died a few years ago, didn't he?
It wasn't very long ago.
2021, yeah. And he's definitely one of the faces that people most associate with French New Wave, as well as Anna Karenina. Based on a 1962 novel, Obsession, by Lionel White. Very English. American journalist.
Okay.
I had no idea that. Okay. Godard's 10th feature film, released between Alphaville and Masculine Feminine. Plot follows Ferdinand, an unhappily married man, I guess he could relate, as he escapes his boring society and travels from Paris to the Mediterranean Sea with Marianne, a girl chased by OAS hitmen from Algeria. I think it was Godard, I'm paraphrasing here. I think it was mostly talked about with Breathless, but I think it applies here. What did he say one time that the only thing you need for a movie is a girl and a gun?
Yeah.
And Breathless definitely is a version of that, but I feel like this is too. And I know if you want to talk about your experience when you first saw this movie briefly, I think that sums up in a lot of ways certain things.
This movie has taken me on a journey. This is the third time I've seen it. I still don't really like the movie, let me say. But I don't really dislike it either anymore. When I first saw this movie, I was in college. At this point in my life, I had decided I was not going to be doing film studies as a career. But I had still taken the first class to get in. It is important to note that Dr. Frank had passed away and died only about 2 weeks into the class. Very sad to lose her.
And that has to naturally have an effect on
It did. It had an effect on the whole class, and we had Juan Carlos Case, who I know you're a big fan of, and I quite loved a lot.
Yeah. He's great.
He was great. I feel like I was happy that I got to have him. I wish it would have been under better circumstances, obviously. Yeah. What I really regret about Dr. Frank also is that I know she was a big fan of David Lynch, and I really, now being an even bigger fan of Lynch, really would have liked to have talked to her about that. And
Did she also have the master on the syllabus?
Yes, she did. I would have been interested to see what she said about that. Also,
that would have been among the earliest times I would have known about that movie even being, quote, taught.
Yeah,
also.
A Man Escaped also was another one that she was going to show that I still haven't seen. Bresson. I still haven't seen any Bresson. Anyway, so Case came in and kind of changed some different movies he wanted to do. Kind of did a little bit. Did the same material, but he was just doing it with different syllabus. And overall, the movies he picked, overall I would have liked better than those others. But I'm still interested in that kind of also ran of what would that have been, you know. And a lot of some of those movies I'd seen already, like Citizen Kane, but I also saw a bunch of movies for the first time. The Fritz Lang film, quite like that. Wings of Desire. District 9 I had not seen before that. This really great docudrama called In This World, which I think is really good. Nobody ever really talks about. Is this migrant crisis movie in the Middle East. It was just a really great movie. I don't ever hear anybody really talk about that. And I think I was like one of the few who really loved that, even in the class too. So I highly recommend that. That's that guy Michael Winterbottom that made all those travel eating movies. Those movies with Steve Coogan, whatever. He made that, I think, and it's a lot more serious than those are, I think. But anyway, so we watched this movie. This is my first Godard. I'm aware of Godard. It's always been something I wanted to watch. You had seen Breathless before this. So I go into this movie not knowing, I kind of knowing what to expect, but not exactly what to expect. Pretty much hated it from the beginning. Was very unhappy with it. Let me say that I even like it even more now, probably, than those people who loved it then might even actually like it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because they saw it as, they saw it as this is even before TikTok, sorta, but they saw it as a TikTok video. Look at this. We're so random, look at where they put the guy, they slam the hood on the guy, and then they fight the guy to get the car, and this is so funny. And
so random.
He wraps his own head in dynamite, like, you know. And it was just very stupid. It was just a very stupid 2 hours of my life.
And you're bound to naturally react to people's reactions to it as you're watching
because
it.
I can't remember if it was before or after. I actually don't know.
Wings of Desire.
When I saw Wings of Desire, which totally blew me away, loved, was very emotionally affected by.
Love him, I mean.
Yes, of course. This isn't just because he's been on the podcast, but and I'll get back to that in a second. But Pierrot le Fou was very beloved by the class.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out pissed. I was talking, and I was so mad, and I was talking to my friends. I was like, "I'll see y'all later. I got to go get my mail from the mailbox."
Yeah,
and walked over there and was just so mad. I was like visibly angry, like, about that movie. Thought it was terrible. It's funny enough. My friend Ryan, he won't mind me saying this either. we were sitting there watching it. We were sitting beside each other, and he wasn't liking it. And he said, he was thinking, I wonder what Levi's thinking of this. About 2 minutes after he thought that, he heard me go, like that. And he said, he was like, and I knew he agreed. Whatever.
Yeah,
because he said at some point you sighed, and I was like, oh, good, he didn't like this either.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a movie that, and not everybody loved that. I gotta say, there were other people that I knew that didn't like it. There was like kind of a collective of us.
Well, that's kind of that whole era,
yeah.
Being in your early 20s. Of, I know everything, and I hate the world, and this hates the world too. And
yeah.
like, that's kind of the ideal age to love that movie too.
Unless you're me,
yeah.
and you're like 5 years ahead
not
of
everybody, but I'm saying
yeah,
speaking,
I feel like I've said, I felt like I went through my Fight Club and my Pierrot le Fou era like 5 years early, and
so
then when
I
I saw them,
this in like Hudson Middle, you've been like, oh yeah, like burning.
I honestly would have because it would have been. It would have felt new to me. I mean, that was also the time when I was watching like Kubrick for the first time, and I had watched King Kong, and I had watched
so Hitchcock,
a lot of Hitchcock. I had watched the Sergio Leone Dollars films, like all these movies that are still some of my favorite movies. That were like, this is cinema.
Well, they're clearly different than what
before. And I know you're thinking that's just that, but I'm talking like a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
here,
right.
You know. When you're a 12-year-old and you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, your life has changed. Yeah. I mean, literally, like, forever changed, as the song says. But, like, so therefore, like, if I would have watched that a little bit after that in high school, I would have been more into that, maybe. But even still, I felt like I always had a more, like, a more inherently traditional approach. What's the word I'm looking for?
Traditional makes sense. Or conventional?
No, not even that, but very just like measured approach to filmmaking. I can't think of the word. It's like we've described There Will Be Blood as that before. A very like
classical.
Yes, a very classical approach to cinema in the sense of this is this. Like, the most different versions of that I was seeing then were, like, the Dollars movies in their own sense of being foreign and, Italian. Or Terrence Malick's films were more, like,
something
philosophical, Not, like, crazy editing or something, but, like, just more open and they're not, like, normal.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't describe those movies as classical exactly.
But they have an earnestness and a sincerity that in their own way is aesthetically classical.
Yes, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, they're different kind of movies though. They're more like heady, and they're not like traditional films. So that was the kind of stuff I was seeing then. Peck and Paw was one version of that got me into, and obviously the Godfather films and Apocalypse Now and Taxi Driver. Some of the movies got me into the New Hollywood. The Graduate, a lot of those movies that got me into that were a little different versions of that.
I don't know did you just say Bonnie and Clyde? I don't remember.
That's one that I saw that I haven't liked.
That has a distinct relationship with this movie I want to talk about later.
Yeah,
and there's a straight line to make.
But anyway, speeding it up. So even then, I probably wouldn't like the movie as much. But so then we saw either before or after that, I can't remember. Saw Wings of Desire.
I might be wrong. I feel like you saw. I remember talking about you on the phone about all this. Felt like you might have saw Pierrot le Fou first.
I think that's what it is.
Then Wings of Desire was later, and you were mad, naturally as I would be, that they hated that, or they hated that.
Because I was watching that movie, and I was just so like, oh my god, this is just so great.
It's deeply spiritual,
and I had
deeply
seen,
earnest,
and
sincere.
I had seen The American Friend that summer before, so I had seen that already. And was in love with that. Just the anger and just the rage of the crowd towards that movie was just so like
that baffles me
angry,
because like I could see a group like that loving Pierrot le Fou, but what's there to hate about Wings of Desire? I don't even if you don't love it, like which we of course do, but I'm just like, what's there even to object to? Is it the fact that it's about angels, or it's about you're gonna sit and actually not object to the world, but instead try to see the world in a more beautiful light by the end of it. I don't understand why people would object that way to it. But
yeah, but so, and I was like so happy in my own way about how I felt about the movie that I wasn't.
You were definitely team Wings of Desire.
Yeah, and I was very much like, no, yeah, this is great. I don't know why everybody's mad about this. And I know Ryan, he didn't really like it at the time, but I think he likes it a lot more now. He kind of and has seen more Vim Vendors and was like, oh no, yeah, that is great. And he got it more or less. I know my friend Carla, I think she liked it, but everybody else was just hated it. But so all that being said, that juxtaposition, I think, said something about me and still does to me about my conception of cinema.
So let me just say, if I can just... I'm the epilogue to this story in some regard, not to insert myself into the story, but I took all that experience for me, and I absorbed it, and I definitely would have been more on your side with that, too, in terms of... as I mentioned, there's a lot about Godard I respect, but a lot of things I just roll my eyes out so hard they about want to fall out of my head. Love Vim Vendors. Love everything about what his vision is. Like, just totally am in love with that. So if I was in the same circumstance, I obviously also would have been, oh yeah, totally screw them and screw that. So, but you told me that, and I was like, oh, I bet I won't like that then. And I knew what this movie was. I knew what it was going for. It's one of the most iconic movies of the French New Wave. I mean, some of the images are just synonymous with the French New Wave that come from this. So I watched it and I was like, all right, I ain't gonna like this. And then I did, and I watched it and I was like, I didn't totally love it, but I was like, no, you know what? I actually think I might like this. The first time I watched it was your second time. So we watched it together, and I think you had already said too then that you still didn't love it, but divorced from that context, you were like, you know what, also you saw it for the first time already, so the shock value
and I had seen other Godard up to that. That was the summer of 2020 when I was going through 60s Godard and seeing a lot of movies I hadn't seen. Also, the second movie I saw of his was Weekend. 2020
is kind of a great year for me to see that movie for the first time. I'm thinking about it.
But Weekend I saw second, so I just totally screwed everything up by seeing those two movies first with Godard. Those are two bad first examples to see of him. But anyway,
so I saw it and I was like, okay, so I don't totally love this, and this is the second time I've seen it, and I will say I liked it even more. I still got notes, but I am a little more like, I think this is fascinating, more so because getting to the form of what this movie is, it takes the couple lovers on the run template and injects it with some justified, some not so justified ideas that, again, as I mentioned earlier, knowing Bonnie and Clyde came out 2 years after this, and which I saw that movie years ago and was a little, I've seen it multiple times obviously, but first time I saw it years ago I was a little like, first time I was like a little perplexed by it. As I've seen it more and more, I like it more and more. And again, you can see why that's the American version of this, but obviously not nearly as angry. But of that, like that our love is just the most important thing ever, and we're gonna leave our mark. And
I think that there's an anger to Bonnie and Clyde,
explosion waiting to happen at the end of both of those stories.
I think there's an anger inherent to Bonnie and Clyde in the sense of, can't you just it's asking the audience, almost saying like, can't these people just love each other and just do what they want to do? And we're all like, well, yeah, but I mean,
you can't just go around killing people.
But I don't think it's even saying that that's right either. It's almost like the movie itself's turned to you and being like, can't these guys figure it out? There's a weird kind of anger implicit in that. I think that's interesting of the time, and even that as a reflection of 60s, counterculture America too, about, but and the way that people viewed them as that, even though those people actually were that. And
that they're effectively terrorists, but they're also running away from terrorists, running away from the law.
They want that freedom.
Why do you think, again, going back to your own evolution on this movie, what about it you don't totally maybe love now, but what about it appeals to you more in a way that
just as an
alluded you the first
aesthetic
time.
experience.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah,
because
I agree. I mean, as you said earlier, this is visually a beautiful movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, this is probably
it's
his
honestly a
best
movie
looking movie.
unworthy of its beauty. No, really. I'm
But
not even
most,
saying that.
Isn't that the most Godardian thing though?
Yeah.
Is like, oh,
yeah.
I think you might have mentioned this in the preview last
Yeah.
time of the car crash, and the car crashes are all throughout both of these movies. And the beauty of like, oh, I'm going to take this thing that's very beautiful, even whether it be this car or whether it be these people, and I'm going to wreck them, and I'm going to put the camera right up in front of it.
Especially in Contempt,
and
that's my favorite moment in the movie. Is that I think that sums up, like you said, his whole career is that image of Jack Palance and Bridget Bardot dead under a tanker truck.
Yeah,
like
and that whole idea of the beauty of destruction or the destruction of beauty, and that juxtaposition. That's like his whole thing.
Yeah,
like,
and I feel like this is a better version of that than Weekend would be, in the sense that becomes about people that you don't really know who they are. And this, I feel like I know who these people are. Even if I don't love them, I feel like I get them.
Yeah.
I really love that scene of them in the car at the beginning of the movie, where it's like, you can tell the car's literally sitting in a studio and they're like revolving the lights.
Yeah, right.
I think is like a great scene to actually get you to kind of care about these people a little bit.
Yeah.
The movie kind of falls apart in the middle sections. I think that's where I'm least interested in it. It becomes more like Weekend will become, which is all...
Not Weekend at Bernie's, but...
No, which is all politics and like... Here's the section about Vietnam. Here's the section about poetry. Here's
what's that Belmondo when he's got that like American... uniform on?
Sure. New York.
New York.
Just so funny.
And that, obviously this was in when this wasn't exactly
65.
Well, but I'm thinking about the date. So it premiered in France in
April.
Well, premiered in Venice in August.
Okay.
And then opened in France in November. This was when America was by this point full blown in the Vietnam War.
New York.
And there's a lot of very like we're going to stop the movie, and you're going to think about how awful the Vietnam War is. And watching it in the year 2023, obviously, or 2024, like, you're like, yeah, I know that already, dummy. Like, dummy, But, like, there is something highly specific about and weird, and we're removed from the context exactly of that time of a French person lecturing America on Vietnam is your fault and sucks, because you're deep down thinking, well,
you were the colonists.
Don't worry, we know that it's not good now, at least hypothetically. Who started the whole thing? I'll give you two chances to guess. Go. I'm like, and just like,
well, and
maybe it's this even self-contempt and nihilism of what France was in the 60s around the world.
It is, because also you'd seen with Le Petit Soldat is about that with Algeria, about the Algerian Civil War, and that feeling of we want to be away from France and sing French. So I think he knows that, and he's saying that. Yeah. But there's an inherent
thumbing in the eyes quality that obviously...
Yeah, well, there's an inherent just hypocrisy to that, as a cinema
Well, I guess
France
he would naturally say,
that.
well, I didn't do all that anyway.
Right, well,
It's just like an American
Well, it's like, well, I'm not doing it either.
Right.
I mean, so that almost becomes whatever. I mean, the worst thing about that's the yellow face.
There is that. Yeah.
Which is just like... Wow. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with the American New York.
That's whatever.
And sure. And
then there's those like I guess they are American expatriates.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like it's like that's your American. You got to do this. But I just really do think it's funny though that it's like I'm gonna do my impression of an American New York. That's it. Like, but
it almost looks. I mean, it is. That would be like what an officer's suit looks like, but it almost even looks antiquated even in the 60s. Like it looks like something almost 20 years ago.
Like Commodore Schmidlap or something. Yeah, it's like which that's English, but I mean like so in that sense the movie it kind of breaks down in the middle and then I think picks itself back up again. But I will say I did feel somewhat more moved by these characters. There's not something I felt the first
I was
going to
mention that. I do not think this movie is as emotionally moving as Contempt is, but I was surprised to the extent to which, like you said, that I'm like, oh, I kind of hope they they make it this time, and I know, of course, they won't. But, yeah, again, that is something that was a little bit of a surprise, as I've seen this only the second time because, again, the first time you see anything like this, you're very likely just going to be overblown by the aesthetic choices made. But, again, there is a surprising emotional beat to the heart of this movie.
Even just the basic thing I didn't really think of until now is, like, in the movie, how much of the narration is one of them says something and the other one says something, and it goes back and forth. It's like a call and response. And it's literally the idea of people in love finishing each other's sentences. Right. And that's just so... I've never seen a movie actually do that in such a direct way. And so when this movie can become about so many other things... and it's just like Las Vegas, or cinema, or life, like and you kind of just want to laugh. And there's parts of it too that I think some of the most interesting stuff is it shows like somebody writing on like a ledger book, and it's like him just writing his poetry or whatever, and it's like the movie can become very like collage in that way. Like I said, like especially Weekend was even more of that.
Just about the writing here, I thought this was interesting. It's on Wikipedia. It says, as with many of Godard's movies, no screenplay was written until the day before shooting, and many scenes were improvised by the actors, especially in the final acts of the movie. Although the film preserved the book's basic plot outline of a middle-aged advertising man running away with and obsessing over his children's teenage babysitter before ultimately killing her, Godard aimed to turn the film into something completely different, as he told Belmondo. I think that's another thing, too, that one of the reasons this movie has a vitality is the plot is very, very simple, and again, it's kind of changing as you watch it, and if you kind of are out of a certain section of it, don't worry, it's going to change its mind in about 10 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, we've said the similar things about Beau's Afraid, I think is kind of a version of all this. It's albeit less political, of being Beau's like,
Beau's Afraid being less political.
As far as being like, we'll go over here now, and then we're over here. Now, it obviously has more of a through line of a story, but I feel like that's the the biggest version I've seen of that since or even Damon Packard's films of like Reflections of Evil being a version of that too, of just like, we don't really know what this is. We're just going to kind of do it.
As much as some of the meta nature of this movie gets on my nerves sometimes, I think we do have to remind ourselves how novel that was still to see in 1965. I mean, I think for a lot of people, and that was why these movies were such an impact on the new Hollywood people, is that they were seeing these movies come out of France and thinking, you can do that? And obviously, movies are going to get meta, never as self-consciously meta in America as they do in Europe. But there is going to be a meta-ness that creeps into movies that, again, I think now we're so more accustomed to. And we have every right to be annoyed by, but we have to remember that back then this was very different and very new. And, deserves a little bit of...
and even the idea that it has the F word in it at one point, which is, I think, the oldest movie I'm aware of that has that.
I'm not sure
that
exactly about the chronology of that,
but other than maybe some documentary somewhere or something, but that just being like, wow, and I remember that getting a big like whistle and whoop when we were watching.
Nice,
it. And it was just very like, all right. It's important to note Persona was made sort of around this time as well, which was another movie that was very much
Bergman,
that was very much. I know it has that whole monologue about a sexual experience that had to have been a big deal at the time,
this might be a good time just to, as we start to maybe slowly wrap up this discussion of Godard, of other 60s national cinemas too, because we've talked about America. There is Bergman. There is also Antonioni, who's doing other things. What I really love about this era when we look back on 60s cinema...
even other French New Wave filmmakers. Right,
I mean, even within
Romaire,
France,
Chabrol, Truffaut,
but I think we would agree that Godard's voice was so loud that while not exactly representing the whole of French thought or culture...
Or even all of European cinema either.
For out of France, that was one of the most clear-cut voices. But what I love about this whole era, why it's, I think, among the strongest and most, ones that you still, I feel like I just get a lot out of, is the diversity of those voices that are making their way on the screen. Even Kurosawa, also if you go over to Asia.
And some of the other Japanese filmmakers like got me Brandon to Kill and Tokyo Drifter. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But,
those are
Sergeant Ray.
Suzuki?
What's his name?
Suzuki, I think.
Seijun Suzuki,
Yeah.
And there's even other ones. He
died in 2017.
Really? Even other, Japanese filmmakers, that Ozu. I mean, so many, and even African cinema. That was more of a 70s thing, but just that and that explosion of international cinema, just in a big way that was really helped along by Bergman and Godard ultimately, and. Everybody
for me, out of all these
and
people,
Fellini as well, his films were such a big part.
For me, out of all these people, Bergman is the North Star of artistic excellence. I feel like for me, and I've not even seen as many as you have, but Bergman, he scratched certain itches of cinema that I've still yet to see anybody quite get to. I mean, he was. If I had to think of like a Mount Rushmore of all time filmmakers, Bergman's face would be on there.
As far as me, my kind of favorite is Antonioni, mainly of how much I love Blow Up and love.
When did that come out? Was that 66? Okay.
And love Aventura and La Notte I quite like. Cleus I like. Okay, The Passenger I like. But that's all just to say that like when he did, like I said, I think Bergman's ultimately better, but I just love that sensibility so much of what Antonioni was going for about. It kind of took the more seriousness of Bergman towards the stylistic form, but also more of the despair, I think, of Godard, and did that in its own way. So that's all. Just say that it was a nice time.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the 60s and you're talking about all these movies,
Yeah, the 60s was just great. I don't think anybody was angry at anybody. It was just such a great time. I'd love to go back to that. Flower power and all that,
Flowers everywhere.
Flowers everywhere. Jean-Luc Godard.
But we might do some more Godard movies in the future. Honestly, there's a lot of his stuff I still need to see.
Yeah.
But I think we picked these movies because they're two of the most iconic, well-known.
One of my favorite moments in Weekend is... The ending, no. That part where it's like, in some random points, the movie will just say, it'll just be a title card that says Weekend.
Yeah,
you forgot what movie you were watching. Yeah. It's like,
So that about does
Cinema. That's the best part in this one. Just like, wow. I forgot what I was doing.
Of a rock and dialogue. But, what have we got next week, whenever you hear it, Jeff?
Stay tuned for scenes from our next episode.
Clark, what time is it?
1:00 p.m.
And what does that mean?
That means you're practicing.
That's right. It means I'm practicing. And if you know I'm practicing, and you know I don't finish practicing until 2 o'clock, which is for at least another 60 minutes, why are you buzzing my buzzer?
Because I want to see you.
What? What is that supposed to mean?
That means let me up.
And who are you?
I'm Clark.
How many times do I have to tell you? I have a certain amount of time allotted for daily practice. You know this, yet you consistently overlook my program.
I get the times mixed up. Everything with you is so damn regulated. A certain time to do this, a certain time to do that. Everything's on a schedule, a timetable. Loosen up, tight ass.
Let me explain something to you. Life is short, okay? I need it like this to do all the things I gotta do. I like order.
Order's fine, but you're ridiculous.
And what do you want?
I want a man who knows what he wants. Decisive. You don't know what you want. Make up your mind, be a man, and don't be wishy-washy on me.
I know what I want. My music. Everything else is secondary.
The day I realized Fonny was in love with me was strange. It was the day he gave Mama that sculpture. I dumped water over Fonny's head and scrubbed Fonny's back in the bathtub. In a time that seems so long ago. I don't remember that we ever had any curiosity concerning each other's bodies. Fonny loved me too much. And that meant that there had never been any occasion for shame between us. We were a part of each other. Flesh of each other's flesh, which we so took for granted that we never thought of the flesh. And yet, it was no surprise to me when I finally understood that he was the most beautiful person I had seen in all my life.
I've slept in this park sometimes. Nah, it's not a good idea.
Why'd you sleep in the park?
It was late. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to wake none of y'all up neither. But I got me a pad down here now. So you want to eat down here, or you want to wait till we get uptown? Or do you want to go to the movies? Or do you want a little wine? Or a little pot? Or a little beer? Or a cup of coffee? Maybe you just want to walk around a little bit more until you make up your mind.
So we thought, what better way to honor Black History Month than to talk about two of the biggest African American directors of the last 40 years, Mo Better Blues from 1990 and from Spike Lee, and If Beale Street Could Talk from 2018 from Barry Jenkins. Two very terrific movies, two very different movies also, though. Both have great, terrific jazz music in them, though, as you could hear from those clips. To talk about Mo Better Blues for a moment, it's Spike Lee's follow-up to Do the Right Thing, which, of course, was such a humongous talking point movie.
That's another movie we watched in that class. I had seen that movie before, but that was when I really fell in love with that, was watching it with an audience and just being like, wow, Do the Right Thing. Like, that was just so great.
And I do think, Do the Right Thing has aged incredibly well. Yeah. It's still one of the best movies of the 80s.
One of the best race documents in film, I think, that, like I said, is aged perfectly. It's, it's not like and obviously it's from, well, I'll tell you the difference because it's from a black voice and not like from someone else, but it's not like a Stanley Kramer product or something that's like, yes, well-meaning white man makes a movie.
And it's hard to believe that Spike Lee, through partially the Michael Jordan commercials he directed in the late 80s, early 90s, he was kind of a thing, a celebrity. I mean, he's still, appeared in those Capital One ads a few years ago with Samuel L. Jackson. And Charles Barkley. So he definitely has remained relevant and has still continued to make some really powerful movies. I think, we both think a lot of Malcolm X, which he made a few movies later.
Bamboozled, we talk a lot about. I quite like that, actually, though, genuinely.
It is good.
But it's like, that's another movie that's like, wow, you really did that. Like, so, yeah.
Mo Better Blues is, I think, kind of, I don't know exactly, I know the movie's well liked, but I think that kind of quietly came out the next year, and I think it came out in 90, and wasn't nearly the talking point that Do the Right Thing was. But I think one of the reasons we wanted to do it, or at least for me, is it's a very black movie, but there's not like this white opposition angle to it. It's about black people living in their own spaces, in their own communities, and of course Denzel Washington. I think it's one of his
kind of like I assume
roles.
She's Gotta Have It also was in its own way, and
because I think the duo of Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X, Spike Lee, by nature of what those movies are about, became identified as an explicitly political filmmaker, and of course he makes movies that are very
even
political.
Summer of Sam later is a version of that in its own way, sort of culturally.
But this movie is just, to me, a beautiful document of black people kind of pursuing their own dreams and relationships, but in a way that allows them to be their own people in their own space and not have that, that element to it. And again, I guess it would have been the first movie Denzel Washington made with him. And Denzel, he's kind of perfect for this part. It's like this ultra committed, like, jazz musician who's like gonna maybe even say, I don't even need relationships in my life. I just need the music. And that like whole commitment to excellence mixed with the romance angle. And it's also a really powerful movie about friendship too, with Wesley Snipes in it too. I've only seen this movie once, but I've been really curious to rewatch it because it's something that I really had a big impression on me.
Yeah.
If Beale Street Could Talk, we're both big fans of Barry Jenkins. Moonlight, of course, was terrific. We both really loved the Underground Railroad TV show also. It's like Levi said a little bit ago when we were watching this clip, like, this movie's just kind of been totally forgotten about. It only came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
And every award season has those movies that kind of dominate the conversation. Was that the same year First Man also was coming out? I think so. And both of those, Damien Chazelle and Jenkins were both center stage in the La La Land Moonlight kerfuffle that happened at the Academy Awards. And both of those movies kind of got like lightly pushed to the side. This even more so than that, because that was still being about the Neil Armstrong story, and the moon landing still had a certain cachet that a James Baldwin adaptation just unfortunately didn't have. Jenkins makes movies you feel like you can touch. I mean, they're these supremely elegant, the way he uses close-ups. He's just a terrific filmmaker.
Yeah.
I don't know why we haven't got more movies from him.
Wong Kar-wai being kind of an inspiration. I feel like there's moments in his, and I know he's a big fan of his. Yeah. There's moments in his movies where I can see, like I said, there's a tactile nature to his cinema that doesn't even mean that the way I mean it. Like you think about Werner Herzog or something. It's very sumptuous and sensual, and inviting and comforting.
And even in movies, bad things are going to happen. You still want to live in that world,
right?
Feel those people, and terrific use of sound also, which you heard in that clip. But again, this is a movie we wanted to shed a little bit of light on because even I got to say, I'm guilty. I've kind of forgotten about it too, even though I thought a lot of it.
I really loved it when it came out, and it's a movie I think about every so often, but I haven't watched again.
This one, naturally involving what it is, does involve a more, I want to say this in quotes, like civil justice, civil rights-y kind of plot points compared to, say, Mo Better Blues does. But even so, it has a certain similarity to Mo Better Blues, that it's black people being among black people and kind of enjoying life, but also getting through tragedies together in a very, I think, very appealing way. So again, we thought we'd honor Black History Month with Mo Better Blues and If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts, Levi, before we cap off this episode?
No, we'll see how the Super Bowl goes. And I hope we got through some of what we wanted to say about these movies. But I feel like that would serve Godard well if it were kind of like all over the place.
Half-answered in a fragment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think we did, but
yeah,
we'll let the listeners decide that. This is Kyle.
This is Levi.
Take care. God bless.
Thank you very much. So nice. Goodbye.